Chapter 2290. Time continued to pass by. Months passed in just a blink of an eye. Everything was calm in the wandering Saint Palace's estate. However, a group of people led by Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, was guarding outside Duan Lingtian's residence. The calm before the storm was only the calm before the storm. In Duan Lingtian's residence, apart from Duan Lingtian, Ke, Gan Ruyen, and Peng Lai were trapped as well. Currently, they had a rough idea of the situation outside and knew they had a slim chance of survival. Initially, they were anxious. However, as time passed, they realized there was nothing they could do about it. They could only accept their fate. When Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, comes out of closed-door cultivation, all of this will be over. Gan Ruyen sighed inwardly. Then, she looked at Ke and asked, "Ke, do you regret it?" "Regret? What are you asking, sister?" Ke asked. "I want to ask you, do you regret knowing him? If you didn't know him, you wouldn't have had such a difficult life. You wouldn't have to face such a crisis today." Gan Ruyen added. As soon as Gan Ruyen finished speaking, Ke shook her head firmly. A bright smile appeared on her beautiful face. "Knowing Brother Tian is the happiest thing that has happened to me in my life. To me, knowing Brother Tian is the best thing that God has done for me. To be able to know Brother Tian and be with him for so long, I am already satisfied. Even if I die at this moment, I will have no regrets." Ke's words came from the bottom of her heart. Based on the bright smile on her face, one could see that she was feeling very happy. Everything she said was her heartfelt words. Although she had already guessed Ke's answer, Gan Ruyen's heart still throbbed when she heard Ke's heartfelt words. Was that man really that good? Unknowingly, Gan Ruyen's gaze became a little misty. No one knew what she was thinking. "Mother, auntie." The bird moved. Duan Si Ling exclaimed as she pointed at the three-legged golden crow in the distance. It was as though she had discovered a new continent. That is, at some point in time, Peng Lai had also arrived here. Looking at the bird that was completely condensed from golden flames in the distance, his face was full of shock and astonishment. Ke and Gan Ruyen also looked over. In the distance, the three-legged golden crow that was as big as a hill stood motionless like a lifeless statue in the room that Duan Lingtian used to cultivate in closed-door cultivation. However, at this moment, a pair of huge wings spread out and began to flap. Moreover, the frequency of its flapping continued to increase. In each of its eyes, a ball of solid red flames appeared. They were like two bright lamps in the darkness, and were particularly eye-catching. Bush, 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 bush. As the three-legged golden crow flapped its wings, the sound of wind whistling rang in the air. Dust filled the air in the ruins as though a sandstorm had just occurred. "It's flying! It's flying!" As Duan Si Ling exclaimed in shock, the three-legged golden crow that was as still as a mountain suddenly rose from the ground and flew up. Although it only rose to a height of about 10 meters, it was enough to shock everyone. After all, this was a bird without any signs of life. Where's father? Duan Si Ling thought she would be able to see her father when the three-legged golden crow rose into the air. However, when the three-legged golden crow rose into the air, her father's figure was nowhere to be seen. In the ruins, apart from the shattered walls and tiles, the ground was flat, and the spacious wooden bed was still there. The only thing missing was the purple figure who was sitting cross-legged on the wooden bed. Master is in the bird's body. Unlike Duan Si Ling, Ke, and Gan Ruyen, Peng Lai could clearly sense Duan Lingtian's aura. Furthermore, the aura emitted from Master's body seems to be even stronger than before. This feeling, it's as if I've made a breakthrough. However, isn't Master a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage? How can he raise his cultivation base if he doesn't undergo the heavenly tribulation? Peng Lai muttered in his heart. He was completely dumbfounded. He couldn't figure it out. What was going on? It was obvious Peng Lai was unaware that Duan Lingtian's cultivation base was only at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage. He thought Duan Lingtian was a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. After all, Duan Lingtian's cultivation base was at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. If his master was not a powerhouse at the ninth form of the Saint Celestial stage, how could he kill Lin Yuan, an elder at the eighth form of the Saint Celestial stage from Wandering Saint Palace with just 2 moves? When the 3-legged golden crow that was completely condensed from golden flames flew up with Duan Ling Tian and hovered in the air. Many people outside Duan Lingtian's mansion noticed the commotion. What's that? Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, had been paying attention to Duan Lingtian's mansion. He frowned when he saw the 3-legged golden crow. He frowned because he could not see what it was. However, there was one thing he was certain of. The young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion whom he wished he could kill was inside. His aura seems to be stronger than before. His current aura is more like that of a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. After faintly realizing this point, Shi Nanfeng was somewhat puzzled. As far as he knew, the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion was only at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Could it be that he concealed his cultivation base's aura when he cultivated? Shi Nanfeng thought to himself. Boom, boom, boom. Peng Lai and Shi Nanfeng were still in a daze when a series of deafening thunderclaps rang from the other side of the Wandering Saint Palace's estate. Everyone in the Wandering Saint Palace's estate was alerted by the thunderous roar. Is this the Celestial Ascension Tribulation? In the mansion of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, Yun Fuyi, the Vice Palace Master, flew out of his room and looked at the tribulation clouds in the sky. His eyes shone brightly as an excited expression appeared on his face. The arrival of the Celestial Ascension Tribulation meant that his master was about to undergo the Heavenly Tribulation. Once his master passed the Heavenly Tribulation, his master would become an eminent celestial and become a bona fide eminent celestial. He did not doubt his master's ability to pass the Heavenly Tribulation. In the history of the Palace Masters of Wandering Saint Palace, no one had ever failed the Heavenly Tribulation. I didn't expect Master to attract the Celestial Ascension Tribulation a month in advance. In other words, Master will become an eminent celestial in just a few days. Yun Fuyi was excited when he thought about this. Tribulation clouds were the clouds and mist that formed the Heavenly Tribulation. They were similar to dark clouds, and one could faintly see bolts of purple lightning rolling within them. They were like small purple dragons that were flashing around the tribulation clouds. What was different from ordinary heavenly tribulations was that behind these tribulation clouds, one could occasionally see 5-colored light that was on the verge of bursting out. It was as though there were 5-colored clouds hiding behind the tribulation clouds. Moreover, the 5-colored clouds were glowing brightly. Boom, boom, boom. The thunderclaps continued to reverberate in the sky. Initially, the tribulation clouds did not cover a large area. However, as time passed, the tribulation clouds could be seen moving rapidly in the sky above the Wandering Saint Palace. Moreover, the tribulation clouds were moving in one direction. That's the direction of Lord Palace Master's mansion? In the Wandering Saint Palace's estate, a group of elders and disciples from the Wandering Saint Palace looked at the sky in unison. They were certain the dark clouds were moving in the direction of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace. There are purple lightning flashing around the dark clouds. I can even see 5-colored lights in the gaps between the dark clouds. Isn't this the tribulation clouds of the Celestial Ascension Tribulation? One of the elders from the Wandering Saint Palace exclaimed as his eyes widened in shock. He seemed to have thought of something. The tribulation clouds of the Celestial Ascension Tribulation? The eyes of many elders and disciples from the Wandering Saint Palace lit up immediately. The tribulation clouds of the Celestial Ascension Tribulation were moving in the direction of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace. It was obvious what this meant. Lord Palace Master is going to undergo the Heavenly Tribulation? It seems like there's going to be an eminent celestial in the Wandering Saint Palace soon. From today onward, the Human Devil clan will have a second eminent celestial. Moreover, the second eminent celestial will be the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace. The entire Wandering Saint Palace was in an uproar. Everyone in the Wandering Saint Palace was excited. At the same time, outside Duan Lingtian's mansion, the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls, including Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, were looking in the direction of the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. They were also looking in the direction of the tribulation clouds. At this moment, they did not notice the tribulation clouds. In the mansion in front of them, the 3-legged golden crow that was completely condensed from golden flames shrunk in the air. In the end, it completely entered the body of a purple-clad young man. This purple-clad young man had been hiding in the 3-legged golden crow's body all this while. "Daddy!" Duan Siling cried out in excitement. The purple-clad young man who was sitting cross-legged in the air suddenly opened his eyes. Chapter 2291. Father! As soon as Duan Lingtian opened his eyes, he heard a familiar exclamation. He did not even have the time to check his sun saint origin that had reached its limit without the help of the elementary devouring tactic. "Si Ling." Duan Lingtian turned to look at the source of the voice. There was a young girl who was about 12 or 13 years old standing there. Si Ling has grown so big. Duan Lingtian's heart skipped a beat when he saw the young girl. It should have been 3 years since I went into closed-door cultivation, right? When Duan Lingtian was in closed-door cultivation, he had already made a preliminary deduction. 3 years should be enough for him to break through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Now that he had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, it meant 3 years had passed. When he saw his daughter standing before him, he was even more certain that he had been in closed-door cultivation for a long time. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's heart was filled with guilt. His daughter had grown from a little girl to a beautiful young girl during the time he was in closed-door cultivation. He felt that he had failed to be a father to his daughter. "Father, you're finally out." Although Duan Siling had grown into a young girl, her temperament was still the same. When she saw Duan Lingtian, she immediately flew into Duan Lingtian's arms. Naturally, Duan Lingtian caught her and smiled faintly. "Siling, you've grown so big in just a blink of an eye. I almost couldn't recognize you." "Father, you've been in closed-door cultivation for almost 3 years. Duan Siling pouted and said to Duan Lingtian with a pitiful expression on her face. "It's all my fault. Father, you shouldn't have been in closed-door cultivation for so long." Duan Lingtian smiled dotingly. His tone was even gentler now. "Father, Mother misses you very much too." Currently, Duan Siling had grown into a slender and elegant young lady. Although she still acted like a little girl in front of Duan Lingtian, she had matured and become more sensible as she grew older. Therefore, after spending some time in Duan Lingtian's embrace, she left Duan Lingtian's embrace and held Duan Lingtian's hand as they walked towards Kerr. At this time, she sensibly stepped aside and stood beside Gan Ruyen. Kerr. Looking at Kerr, Duan Lingtian's eyes were filled with tenderness. "Brother Tian." Kerr muttered softly as she looked at the man who had captivated her. Then, she threw herself into Duan Lingtian's arms and hugged Duan Lingtian tightly. It was as though she did not want to let go of him. Duan Lingtian had a guilty expression on his face as he hugged Kerr in his arms, and they shared a warm moment together. At this moment, silence spoke louder than words. It was as though their hearts were stuck together and could not be separated. "Master." Peng Lai, who was standing nearby, could not help but have a complicated expression on his face when he saw Duan Lingtian coming out of closed-door cultivation. It was his master who had helped him raise his innate spiritual root to an indigo innate spiritual root. Moreover, it was a dark indigo innate spiritual root. In these 3 years, his cultivation base had broken through to the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, making him another elder at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Wandering Saint Palace. Usually, it would be a joyous occasion for him to break through to the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. However, he could not bring himself to feel happy at this moment. This was because he knew even if his cultivation base had broken through to the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage, he would still be regarded as a traitor by the Wandering Saint Palace. Let alone being an elder in the Wandering Saint Palace, he might not even be able to survive. If he was not bound by the lightning penalty oath, he would still have a choice. But now, he had no choice but to follow his master to the end. I can only hope that Master who has been in closed-door cultivation for 3 years will be able to create a miracle. That way, I'll be able to survive. Everyone was afraid of death. Even Peng Lai was no exception. If he could survive, he was willing to leave the wandering saint palace, betray the human devil clan, and follow his master to the ends of the world. Moreover, he had a strong feeling that his master would be able to survive. If his master could pass this test, he would be able to achieve much more in the future by following his master instead of staying in the wandering saint palace. His aura, it seems like it has become much stronger compared to 3 years ago. Gan Ru Yen looked at Duan Lingtian with a complicated expression on her face. However, after a while, she shifted her attention to Duan Lingtian's aura. 3 years ago, his cultivation base was only at the 7th form of the Saint's celestial stage. Peng Lai was unaware of Duan Lingtian's true cultivation base 3 years ago, but Gan Ru Yen, who was Ker's twin sister, knew very well about it. Duan Lingtian's strength was comparable to an ordinary powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint's celestial stage. However, Gan Ru Yen knew very well that Duan Lingtian's cultivation base was different from Duan Lingtian's. At that time, Duan Lingtian's cultivation base was only at the 7th form of the Saint's celestial stage. With the help of the black innate spiritual root, his cultivation base should have broken through to the 8th form of the Saint's celestial stage in 3 years, right? After all, Gan Ru Yen had not reached that level and had not experienced the black innate spiritual root before. Therefore, she could only make such a guess. Currently, he should be able to fight the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, right? Gan Ru Yen thought to herself. Uncle Peng Lai, what's with those clouds that keep moving? They seem to be glowing. They're so colorful. How beautiful! Duan Xiling asked Peng Lai when she saw the rapidly moving dark clouds in the sky. Upon hearing Duan Xiling's words, Peng Lai shifted his gaze to the sky and saw the dark clouds moving in a certain direction. The dark clouds were moving in the same direction. In addition, behind these dark clouds, there was an incomparably dazzling 5-colored brilliance that occasionally refracted through the gaps between the dark clouds. Suddenly, Peng Lai's pupils shrank and his face changed greatly. He immediately let out a cry of surprise. He exclaimed, "The Celestial Ascension Tribulation." Peng Lai realized he should not disturb his master, so he lowered his voice so he did not disturb Duan Lingtian and Ker, who were still cuddling. However, Gan Ru Yen, who was standing close to him and paying close attention to him, heard his exclamation, "The Celestial Ascension Tribulation." Gan Ru Yen shifted her gaze to the sky. Her expression changed drastically when she saw the dark clouds moving in the same direction. It's really the tribulation clouds from the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. As a former disciple of Zoroastrianism, Gan Ru Yen had, naturally, heard about the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. She also knew about the tribulation clouds from the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. Therefore, the moment she shifted her gaze to the sky, she was completely sure of it. The clouds in the sky were moving in the same direction. She could vaguely see dark clouds with purple lightning flashing around them. These were the tribulation clouds from the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. Where are the tribulation clouds gathering? Gan Ru Yen looked at Peng Lai and asked for confirmation. Although she was shocked and had her own guesses, she still looked at him. That direction. It's where Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, lives. Peng Lai smiled bitterly. Previously, I was wondering how Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, hates the Azure Cloud Mansion. If Lord Palace Master didn't come out of closed-door cultivation, he would have attacked Master. However, he obediently stood guard outside. Regarding this, I was extremely puzzled before and did not know the reason. Now, I finally understand. As it turns out, Lord Palace Master went into closed-door cultivation to become an eminent celestial. Now that he knows Lord Palace Master is about to become an eminent celestial, it's only natural that Shi Nanfeng doesn't have the guts to attack Master in the Wandering Saint Palace. Peng Lai finally understood everything. However, at the same time that he understood, his heart trembled even more, and an increasingly bitter smile appeared on his face. Is it really the residence of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace? Although she was mentally prepared, Gonru Yen still couldn't help but tremble when she heard Peng Lai's confirmation. Does this mean Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, is going to undergo the heavenly tribulation in a few days? Once I pass the heavenly tribulation, I'll become an eminent celestial? The moment she thought of this, the glimmer of hope that had risen in Gonru Yan's heart was mercilessly crushed. Previously, she had guessed Duan Lingtian's cultivation base had broken through to the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Duan Lingtian, who was at the 7th form of the Saint Celestial stage, was no match for the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. What about Duan Lingtian, who was at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage? Since Gonru Yen did not know there was a limit to Saint Origin, she was unaware that Duan Lingtian would not be a match for the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace even if he had just broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, let alone the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Naturally, that was assuming that Lingtian's damaged Super Saint weapon, the Devil Seal tablet, was useless against a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Now that she knew the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace was about to undergo the heavenly tribulation, she knew he would become an eminent celestial. The glimmer of hope in her heart was crushed and replaced by despair. This feeling was equivalent to a drowning person who was on the verge of death. After grasping onto a life-saving straw with great difficulty, the straw was cut off. She felt as though she had ascended from hell to heaven, only to fall from heaven to hell again. No. What if he fails the heavenly tribulation and dies? Gonru Yen muttered to herself as she thought of another possibility. Her eyes shone brightly, and a hint of hope could be seen on her face. As far as she knew, it was not certain that a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage would be able to overcome the heavenly tribulation. Fail the heavenly tribulation? Chapter 2292. It's impossible for him to fail? Gonru Yen frowned when she heard Peng Lai's words. What do you mean? Are you that confident in Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace? It's not that I'm confident in him, Peng Lai said with a bitter expression on his face. In the history of Wandering Saint Palace, there's no precedent of a palace master failing the celestial ascension tribulation. All the palace masters of Wandering Saint Palace have passed down a method to deal with the celestial ascension tribulation. What? Gonru Yan's expression changed drastically when she heard Peng Lai's words. In other words, Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, will definitely be able to overcome the celestial ascension tribulation and become an eminent celestial? Gonru Yen asked again after a series of changes in her expression. She wanted further confirmation. When Gonru Yen saw Peng Lai nodding, she felt as though the sky had changed color and the moon had dimmed. It felt as though the end of the world had arrived. However, after a while, she seemed to have thought of something, and her eyes lit up again. The celestial ascension tribulation will take a few days. This means the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace won't be able to make a move for the next few days. When Gonru Yen thought of this, she immediately looked at Duan Lingon and said anxiously, Duan Ling, take us away from here while the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace is undergoing the celestial ascension tribulation. We won't be able to leave if he overcomes the celestial ascension tribulation. Gonru Yan's tone became more and more anxious as she urged Duan Lingtian to leave. As for Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, Gonru Yen might have thought Duan Lingtian was weaker than him. However, now that she could vaguely sense Duan Lingtian's cultivation base had improved, she was confident Duan Lingtian would be able to fight against Duan Lingtian. What she didn't know was, although Duan Lingtian's cultivation base had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, his strength had not improved much compared to 3 years ago. Unless the Devil Seal tablet could suppress the palace master of the Great Spirit Palace, it would be difficult for Duan Lingtian to fight against him. Tribulation? Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be stunned when he heard Gonru Yan's words. Then he fell into deep thought. When Kerr heard Gonru Yan's words, she immediately left Duan Lingtian's embrace and looked at Gonru Yen. Sister, you said the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace is undergoing the heavenly tribulation? Is it the celestial ascension tribulation? Kerr knew what it meant for a powerhouse at the ninth form of the Saint Celestial stage to undergo the heavenly tribulation. This meant that as long as he passed the heavenly tribulation, he would become an eminent celestial. On the other hand, eminent celestials only needed to wait for a while before they could ascend to the Devata realm. Ganru Yen nodded solemnly. Then she looked at the sky and said, "Look at the dark clouds in the sky. These are the tribulation clouds of the celestial ascension tribulation. There are 5 colors hidden behind the tribulation clouds. This is the symbol of the celestial ascension tribulation. The tribulation clouds are converging toward the residence of Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace." Ganru Yen turned to look at Duan Lingtian when she finished speaking. "Now take us away. The strongest obstruction is the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, Shinan Feng." Ganru Yen looked at Duan Lingtian. However, before she could finish speaking, she was interrupted by Duan Lingtian. "Shinan Feng? The palace master of Great Spirit Palace?" Duan Lingtian was unaware of the enmity between the palace master of Great Spirit Palace and the Azure Cloud Mansion. For this reason, he was stunned when he heard Shinan Feng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, had become an obstacle to him. Not only was Duan Lingtian unaware of the enmity between the palace master of Great Spirit Palace and the Azure Cloud Mansion, but he was also unaware that his identity as the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion had been exposed a year ago. Duan Lingtian finally understood what had happened after Peng Lai's explanation. The last disciple of the palace master of Great Spirit Palace was the vanguard of the Human Devil clan when they invaded the Azure Cloud Mansion. However, he was killed by father and another powerhouse from the Azure Cloud Mansion? Duan Lingtian could not help but feel shocked when he heard this news. The last disciple of the palace master of Great Spirit Palace was a powerhouse at the 6th form of the Saint Celestial stage, but he was killed by father and another powerhouse from the Azure Cloud Mansion? Who's that powerhouse from the Azure Cloud Mansion? Father's strength has already reached such a level? Duan Lingtian was shocked. Moreover, the entire Human Devil clan knows that I, the new Vice Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, am the young Mansion Master of Azure Cloud Mansion. Moreover, my identity was exposed because of a portrait drawn by someone from the lower province. Duan Lingtian realized he had been careless when he learned about this. If he had disguised himself in advance, he would not have been in such a passive position. Shinan Feng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, wanted to kill me a year ago. Perhaps he's afraid of the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace who's about to become an eminent celestial. That's why he didn't make a move and only waited outside my mansion. He waited for me to escape before he made a move. Otherwise, he would wait for the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace to kill me? Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes as a cold gleam flashed in his eyes when he learned about the situation he was in. All of a sudden, Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed as though he had noticed something. My Sun Saint origin seems to be unstable. Duan Lingtian discovered that the Sun Saint origin in his body had begun to stir uncontrollably. It was like a playful child who had discovered a new toy and wanted to rush out of his body. This heaven and earth. At this moment, Duan Lingtian discovered something. His understanding of heaven and earth seemed to have deepened by a lot. Although he had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage earlier, he could still comprehend heaven and earth. Moreover, there was an inexplicable connection between heaven and earth. However, that kind of understanding could not be considered deep. However, when the Sun Saint origin in his body began to stir, he discovered something. His comprehension of this world seemed to have risen by an entire level. It was as though he had just grasped the basics of heaven and earth and was now at the fundamental awareness stage. It seems to be because of the tribulation clouds from the celestial ascension tribulation. At the same time, Duan Lingtian could clearly sense something. The Sun Saint origin in his body seemed to have formed a subtle connection with the tribulation clouds in the sky. It seems like the sun force that has merged with my Sun Saint origin has formed a connection with the tribulation clouds in the sky. Duan Lingtian discovered this after he carefully examined his sun force. The Sun Force originated from the enlightenment he received from Hua Lao, the three-legged golden crow. It was the power of the three-legged golden crow. It was superior to all the forces in the mundane world. It was comparable to the Devata realms. For this reason, Duan Lingtian did not know much about the Sun Force. The only thing he knew was the Sun Force was not simple. Previously, when his cultivation base was still weak, the Sun Force had merged with his Sun Force. It was so powerful that it was comparable to the strength of someone with a higher cultivation base than him. Duan Lingtian discovered the Sun Saint origin in his body had somehow formed a connection with the tribulation clouds in the sky. In the sky outside the mansion, Palace Master Yuan is undergoing the heavenly tribulation? Shi Nanfeng, the Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace, shifted his attention to the direction of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace as the tribulation clouds gathered in the sky. This was because the tribulation clouds were heading in that direction. At this moment, Shi Nanfeng realized Yuan Haochen, the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, had attracted the celestial ascension tribulation. From today onward, there's going to be another eminent celestial in the human devil clan. Shi Nanfeng's gaze turned complicated when he thought about this. In the past, although Yuan Haochen, the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, was slightly stronger than him, it was not by much. They were both Palace Masters of the 3 palaces and 6 halls. Their positions in the human devil clan were similar. However, now that Yuan Haochen had become an eminent celestial, not only was Yuan Haochen's strength far superior to him, but his status was also higher than him. Once an eminent celestial appeared in the human devil clan, his status was equivalent to the patriarch. Is Palace Master Yuan going to undergo the heavenly tribulation? Isn't it obvious? Heavens! This is big news. I have to report this to our Lord Hall Master. I have to report this to our Lord Hall Master as well. The people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls began to discuss among themselves when they realized Yuan Haochen had attracted the celestial ascension tribulation. After a brief discussion, 7 figures flew out of the Wandering Saint Palace's estate. These 7 people were from the 3 palaces and 6 halls other than the Wandering Saint Palace and the Great Spirit Palace. They had left the Wandering Saint Palace to inform their respective forces about the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace triggering the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. It was almost impossible for Yuan Haochen to fail the Celestial Ascension Tribulation that was attracted by Yuan Haochen. In other words, there would be a new eminent celestial in the Wandering Saint Palace in just a few days. This was an earth-shattering matter to the human devil clan. For this reason, they had to return to their respective forces as soon as possible to inform their leaders. Shortly after the 7 people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls left, Shi Nanfeng, the Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace, seemed to have sensed something. His eyes narrowed as he lowered his head and looked at the mansion in front of him. There, a purple figure was leading the 3 women into the air. There was another figure following closely behind them. The young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion, Duan Lingtian. Chapter 2293. Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace? When Shi Nanfeng, the Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace, looked at him, Duan Lingtian noticed it and looked at him. He could clearly see the killing intent in Shi Nanfeng's eyes. Trying to escape? Shi Nanfeng sneered when he saw Duan Lingtian looking at him. He thought that Duan Lingtian was trying to escape. The reason why he thought so was because he had put himself in Duan Lingtian's shoes and tried to guess what was going on in his mind. In his opinion, currently, Duan Lingtian was aware of the situation. He was being targeted by Yuan Haochen, the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, while Duan Lingtian, the Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace, was outside the Wandering Saint Palace. Now that Yuan Haochen had attracted the Celestial Ascension Tribulation, he would be able to break through and become an eminent celestial in a few days. Faced with the threat of an eminent celestial, he did not believe Duan Lingtian would dare to stay in the Wandering Saint Palace. For this reason, he thought Duan Lingtian was trying to escape from the Wandering Saint Palace. Go! Duan Lingtian retracted his gaze from Shi Nanfeng and flew into the distance with Duan Xiling, and Gan Ruyen. Peng Lai heard Duan Lingtian's call and followed closely behind. This direction seems to be the direction of the palace master's residence, right? Following Duan Lingtian, Peng Lai raised his head and saw the tribulation clouds converging in front of him. The residence of the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace was in that direction. Initially, Peng Lai thought his master was going to lead them away from the Wandering Saint Palace. He did not expect his master would lead them to the palace master of the Wandering Saint Palace. For a moment, he was stunned. In fact, he wasn't the only one who was stunned. What is he trying to do? Do you want to send yourself to your death? Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, initially thought Duan Lingtian would leave the Wandering Saint Palace's estate. However, not only did Duan Lingtian not leave the Wandering Saint Palace's estate, but he was also heading toward the center of the Wandering Saint Palace's estate. It was also the residence of Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. That person is Duan Lingtian, the vice palace master of Wandering Saint Palace? At the same time, the rest of the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls had also discovered Duan Lingtian's group. Vice Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace? He's the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion. Where was he planning to go? He's heading to the center of the Wandering Saint Palace's estate, right? Even now, he's still not running away. Maybe he doesn't know the way. How is that possible? He's been in the Wandering Saint Palace for 3 years. Even if he spends most of his time cultivating, it's impossible for him to not know the shortest distance from his residence to the Wandering Saint Palace's estate, right? I think so too. Peng Lai and Shi Nanfeng were not the only ones who were confused by Duan Lingtian's actions. Even the rest of the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls were confused. They had no idea what Duan Lingtian was trying to do. There were a few elders from the Wandering Saint Palace among the people present. When they saw Duan Lingtian heading toward the tribulation clouds in the sky, they could not figure out what Duan Lingtian was trying to do. Isn't the direction he's heading in the direction of the Asgard Master's residence? Is he going to deliver himself to Lord Palace Master so Lord Palace Master can deal with him? Although the same thought had appeared in their minds, they did not believe Duan Lingtian would do such a thing. In that case, why would Duan Lingtian do that? Where was he going? What was he trying to do? It feels like, the closer I get to the place where the tribulation clouds gather, the more agitated the sun force in my Saint Chi becomes. It's as though there's something in the center of the tribulation clouds that's attracting it. Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he led Kerr and the other 2 women forward. And during this process, I feel that my comprehension of this world is also gradually increasing. Moreover, it's improving with every passing moment. Although the speed of my improvement isn't fast, my comprehension of heaven and earth is much better than those who have just broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage a few years ago. Moreover, the closer I get to the tribulation clouds, the faster my comprehension of heaven and earth is improving. Although it's only a slight improvement, it's still improving. For this reason, Duan Lingtian brought Peng Lai, the 3 women, and Peng Lai to the tribulation clouds. He had a feeling that the tribulation clouds would be helpful to him. Moreover, it would be helpful to him. His current comprehension of heaven and earth was enough to prove this. Based on my current comprehension of heaven and earth, I can activate the Sun Saint energy. With this thought in mind, Duan Lingtian raised his hand slightly. Waves of majestic energy surged out of his hand, causing the air to tremble. As expected, I've become much stronger. Duan Lingtian could clearly see that the Sun Saint energy was not weak at all. The saint power of the sun that he was releasing now seemed to have established a very subtle connection with the heaven and earth. This kind of connection felt very faint, but it did exist. The reason the connection is so faint is probably because my comprehension of heaven and earth is not deep enough. For example, Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, could easily activate the saint origin in his body and create a strong resonance with heaven and earth. Moreover, his saint origin is very powerful. Duan Lingtian could still vividly remember what happened 3 years ago. He had used all his strength to wield his sword, but Yuan Haochen had casually blocked it. Yuan Haochen held it in his hand as though he was playing with a toy. Subsequently, Yuan Haochen had deflected his sword with just a flick of his finger. The strength contained in the sword was not to be underestimated. It shocked Duan Lingtian. At that time, he could sense how terrifying a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage who had comprehended heaven and earth was. At that time, Yuan Haochen's comprehension of heaven and earth had reached its limit. Otherwise, he would not have been able to attract the Celestial Ascension Tribulation in just 3 years. Although one would need an opportunity to attract the Celestial Ascension Tribulation, one would need an opportunity. However, one would not be able to obtain that opportunity unless one had comprehended heaven and earth to a certain extent. It's only a short journey from my mansion to here, but my comprehension of heaven and earth has already reached such a high level. Duan Lingtian could not help but feel excited when he sensed the connection between his Sun Saint origin and heaven and earth. Duan Lingtian was so focused on comprehending the connection between his Sun Saint origin and heaven and earth that he did not even glance at Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace. He knew Shi Nanfeng would not dare to make a move as long as he was in the Wandering Saint Palace's estate. This was especially true when Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, was about to break through and become an eminent celestial. Shi Nanfeng would not dare to make a move. Duan Lingtian had a thorough understanding of the current situation. As long as he did not leave the Wandering Saint Palace's estate, Shi Nanfeng would not dare to make a move on him. As for Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, although Duan Lingtian was wary of him, he still wanted to find out what was attracting the Sun Saint origin at the place where the tribulation clouds gathered. Duan Lingtian had a strong feeling in his heart. He would definitely not return empty-handed this time. The Sun Saint origin comes from Hualao. It's a force from the Devata realm. It's superior to all forces in the mundane realms. Moreover, it'll continue to improve as my cultivation base improves. Now that Yuan Haochen has attracted the Celestial Ascension Tribulation, there seems to be something attracting the Sun Saint origin at the place where the tribulation clouds gather. The closer I get to the place where the tribulation clouds gather, the more agitated the Sun Saint origin becomes. Even my comprehension of heaven and earth is improving. Based on the current situation, it's beneficial for me. Duan Lingtian weighed the pros and cons as he made his way forward. Should he continue taking the risk? Or should he turn back and retreat? He was not the kind of person who would throw his life away. After all, he still had his wife and daughter by his side. He would not harm them. What are you trying to do? Not only are you not leaving the Wandering Saint Palace's estate, but you're also heading toward the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. If you want to die, don't drag Ke and Si Ling down with you. Gan Ru Yen had been holding back for a long time. However, when she saw Duan Lingtian was still heading toward the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, she could no longer hold back her anger. Sister, I believe Brother Tian has his reasons for doing this. Don't worry. Ke comforted Gan Ru Yen when she saw Duan Lingtian's reaction. Based on her words, it was clear she trusted Duan Lingtian. That's right, Auntie. Father won't harm us. Duan Si Ling nodded and said to Gan Ru Yen. Gan Ru Yen felt helpless when she saw this. She was at a loss for words. After glancing at Gan Ru Yen indifferently, Duan Lingtian ignored her and continued walking. With my current strength, if I don't use the Devil Seal tablet, I'm definitely no match for Shi Nanfeng and Yuan Haochen. However, if I use the Devil Seal tablet, I might be able to kill them, but there's also a possibility that I won't be able to kill them. After all, Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, isn't an eminent celestial yet. Duan Lingtian thought to himself, if I can't kill them, there's no difference between retreating or continuing on. If the Devil Seal tablet can kill Shi Nanfeng, it'll definitely be able to kill Yuan Haochen as well. If it can't, it'll be a waste of time. If that's the case, why don't I follow the Sun Force and continue to head to the place where the tribulation clouds of the Celestial Ascension Tribulation gather? Perhaps there's a fortuitous encounter waiting for me there? Chapter 2294. For Duan Lingtian, there was no need to worry. It made no difference whether he left the Wandering Saint Palace's estate or headed to the residence of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace. If he left the Wandering Saint Palace's estate, he would have to face a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint's celestial stage. If he headed to the residence of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, he would have to face a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint's celestial stage. Under such circumstances, it was only natural for him to choose the Sun Force. At least until now, he had followed the Sun Force's choice and walked toward the place where the tribulation clouds of the immortal ascension tribulation gathered. There were only benefits and no disadvantages. Since the celestial ascension tribulation is attracted by Yuan Haochen, the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, the place where the tribulation clouds gather should be where he's at. As for him, he should be in the mansion that he usually lives in. This direction is indeed the direction of his residence. Although Duan Ling Tian did not say anything along the way, he had already begun to think about it. Even if Yuan Haochen succeeds in passing the celestial ascension tribulation, it'll take him a few days. After all, the celestial ascension tribulation is different from ordinary heavenly tribulations. There are 81 bolts of tribulation lightning. Only by blocking the 81 bolts of lightning and surviving would one be considered to have passed the celestial ascension tribulation. At that time, one's saint origin energy would be born in one's body. At that time, one would be considered an eminent celestial. Before he passes the celestial ascension tribulation, he'll only be a powerhouse at the 9th form of the saint's celestial stage like Shi Nanfeng, the Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace. When Duan Ling Tian thought of this, he sped up again with the 3 women in tow. Peng Lai followed closely behind. Shi Nanfeng, the Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace, followed closely behind. Apart from Shi Nanfeng, there were also people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls following behind them. Naturally, there were also a few elders from the Wandering Saint Palace. These elders were sent by Yun Fuyi, the Vice Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, to keep an eye on Duan Ling Tian. Now that Duan Ling Tian had left his residence, they had no choice but to follow him. With Duan Ling Tian and the others in the lead, the group made their way to the residence of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace like a swarm of bees swarming to a pond of flowers. My comprehension of heaven and earth is still improving. Moreover, it's getting faster and faster. As Duan Ling Tian drew closer to the residence of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, he could clearly sense this. I can't wait. Because of this, he became more curious and expectant about the thing that attracted the sun's energy. Duan Ling Tian and the others were making their way to the residence of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace. Apart from the Wandering Saint Palace and the Great Spirit Palace, the other 3 palaces and 6 halls in the Human Devil clan had also received news that the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace had attracted the Celestial Ascension Tribulation and was about to become an eminent celestial. Crimson Blaze Palace. Yuan Haochen attracted the Celestial Ascension Tribulation? Wu Tianjin, the Vice Palace Master of Crimson Blaze Palace, was shocked when he heard the news from an elder who had just returned to the Crimson Blaze Palace. Yuan Haochen, the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, was widely acknowledged as the person whose strength was closest to the patriarch of the Human Devil clan. However, he had attracted the Celestial Ascension Tribulation? Based on the tradition of the Wandering Saint Palace, the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace has never failed the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. In other words, to Yuan Haochen, the Celestial Ascension Tribulation is just a small matter. He'll be able to become an eminent celestial in just a few days. Wu Tianjin could not help but gasp when he thought of this. He immediately went to look for the Palace Master of Crimson Blaze Palace. This was no small matter. It was something that would shake the entire Crimson Blaze Palace and the entire Human Devil clan. Azure Shinhal. The Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace is going to undergo the Celestial Ascension Tribulation? My goodness! Is there going to be a second eminent celestial in the Human Devil clan? I heard the tribulation clouds are gathering above the Wandering Saint Palace's estate. I have to go and see what's going on. Even if I can't enter the Wandering Saint Palace's estate, I want to watch it from afar. I want to go as well. I've never seen the tribulation clouds of the celestial ascension tribulation before. Azure Sheen Hall. When news of Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, spread, everyone was in an uproar. A group of people even left the Azure Sheen Hall and headed to the Wandering Saint Palace's estate to watch the show. Apart from the Crimson Blaze Palace and Azure Sheen Hall, even the other 5 halls of the 3 palaces and 6 halls reacted similarly when they heard about Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, attracting the celestial ascension tribulation. When the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls made their way to the Wandering Saint Palace's estate, many people in the Human Devil Saint City were alerted. Soon after, news of the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace attracting the celestial ascension tribulation spread throughout the Human Devil Saint City. In the next few days, we'll have a second eminent celestial in the Human Devil clan. This is a joyous occasion for the Human Devil clan. It's indeed great news. With such an eminent celestial in the Wandering Saint Palace, the Wandering Saint Palace will become the leader of the 3 palaces and 6 halls in the Human Devil clan. The entire Human Devil Saint City was in an uproar. Apart from the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls, everyone else was happy about the Wandering Saint Palace having an eminent celestial. After all, now that the Human Devil clan had a second eminent celestial, the Human Devil clan's status in the Devil clans would be elevated. As a member of the Human Devil clan, how could they not be happy? In an inconspicuous and dilapidated mansion in the northeastern corner of the Human Devil Saint City, the sound of a gust of wind could be heard. When the wind blew, a figure appeared in the front yard of the dilapidated mansion. It was as if he had appeared out of thin air. It was a well-built middle-aged man dressed in a green robe. He had thick eyebrows and big eyes. His appearance was ordinary, and his expression was calm. It was impossible to tell if he was happy or angry. After taking a few steps, the middle-aged man entered the dilapidated mansion and arrived in front of a room. The door of the room was covered in spider webs. It was obvious no one had opened the door for a long time. However, at this moment, the middle-aged man bowed respectfully to the cobweb-covered door as if there was someone he respected behind the door. Master, Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, has successfully attracted the celestial ascension tribulation. He'll become an eminent celestial in a few days at most. The middle-aged man said respectfully. From the beginning until the end, he had been very polite. Based on his words, it was not difficult to understand why he was so polite. After all, the person behind the door was his master. The leaders of the Human Devil clan's 3 palaces and 6 halls were not present. If they were present, they would be shocked to see the middle-aged man acting like this. This was because the middle-aged man was none other than the patriarch of the Human Devil clan, an eminent celestial. As soon as the middle-aged man, the patriarch of the Human Devil clan, finished speaking, the sound of wind whistling in the air rang in the air. Following that, a gray fog gushed out of the crack of the door in front of the patriarch of the Human Devil clan, which was covered with cobwebs. During this process, all the spider webs outside the door were swept away. After the gray fog left the door, it hovered near the patriarch of the Human Devil clan. Then, it began to gather and gradually transformed into a human figure. In just a blink of an eye, the gray fog had transformed into an old man dressed in gray. The old man had white hair and eyebrows. His face was wrinkled, and he held an old walking stick in his hand. He looked extremely ordinary. However, based on the mysterious technique the old man had used earlier, one could tell he was not an ordinary person. Most importantly, the patriarch of the Human Devil clan had addressed him as master. What a joke! Why would the patriarch of the Human Devil clan address an ordinary old man as master? Yuan Haochen? You're the descendant of the old fart from the Wandering Saint Palace, Yuan Dongxing? The old man's cloudy eyes suddenly lit up as he looked at the green-clad middle-aged man. The old man's voice was so hoarse that it sent chills down one's spine. Yes. The green-clad middle-aged man, the patriarch of the Human Devil clan, immediately nodded in response to the old man's question. Naturally, he knew who Yuan Dongxing was. Yuan Dongxing was an elder from the Wandering Saint Palace 5,000 years ago. 5,000 years ago, as an elder of the Wandering Saint Palace, Yuan Dongxing was already at the 8th form of the Saint Celestial stage. After breaking through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, he attracted the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. Unfortunately, he was not the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, so he did not have the means to overcome the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. Most people in the Human Devil clan thought Yuan Dongxing was dead. He had died after failing the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. However, if he had died at that time, would the mysterious gray-clad old man, the master of the current patriarch of the Human Devil clan, have called him an old fart? Yes. The gray-clad old man nodded when he heard the patriarch of the Human Devil clan's confirmation. Not bad. You're much better than that old fart, Yuan Dongxing. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. Now that there's a second eminent celestial in the Human Devil clan, it's time for me to leave, the gray-clad old man said. The gray-clothed old man continued. There was a sense of relief in his tone. Master, are you really leaving? Chapter 2295. 1,000 years have passed in just a blink of an eye. My fourth heavenly tribulation is coming soon. I'm not confident I'll be able to overcome the heavenly tribulation if I continue to stay here. The gray-clad old man sighed when he saw the patriarch of the Human Devil clan's reluctance. This time, the little fellow from the Wandering Saint Palace has attracted the Celestial Ascension Tribulation and is about to become an eminent celestial. This is a great opportunity for me. With both of you guarding the Human Devil clan, I can leave with peace of mind. The gray-clad old man had addressed the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace as a little fellow. After all, Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, was about to become an eminent celestial. How could the gray-clad old man address him as a little fellow? It was only because no one else was here. Otherwise, their hearts would have jumped out of their chests when they heard the gray-clad old man's words. However, the patriarch of the Human Devil clan did not react when he heard the gray-clad old man address the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace as a little fellow. It was as though it was only natural for the gray-clad old man to address the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace as a little fellow. Counting the time, Master, your fourth heavenly tribulation is indeed coming soon. The patriarch of the Human Devil clan nodded. The reluctance on his face intensified. After a long while, he asked, Master, when do you plan to leave? I'll leave after the little fellow passes the heavenly tribulation and becomes an eminent celestial, the gray-clad old man replied. The patriarch nodded. All right. The patriarch nodded. Since that's the case, I'll accompany you when he's done with his tribulation, Master. Let's go now. The tribulation clouds have been gathering for some time now. The first bolt of lightning will strike in half an hour at most. Speaking of which, it has been a long time since I've seen the Wandering Saint Palace's technique to overcome the heavenly tribulation. As soon as the old man finished speaking, his entire body moved again, and then he turned into a cloud of gray mist that soared into the sky like a gray cloud breaking through the sky. The gray mist was flying toward the Wandering Saint Palace's estate. Swoosh! Almost as soon as the old man turned into a cloud of gray mist, the patriarch of the Human Devil clan followed closely behind him. Master, I've heard about the Wandering Saint Palace's inherited heavenly tribulation technique. However, it said that only the palace master of the Wandering Saint Palace can use it, right? The patriarch of the Human Devil clan asked respectfully as he looked at the gray fog in front of him. It was none other than the master of the patriarch of the Human Devil clan, the gray-clad old man from before. The Wandering Saint Palace's heavenly tribulation transcendence technique can only be used once in a while. For this reason, only the palace masters of Wandering Saint Palace have the opportunity to use this technique. Based on the gray-clad old man's words, it was clear he knew the technique passed down in the Wandering Saint Palace. I see. The patriarch of the Human Devil clan finally understood what was going on. He continued to follow his master to the Wandering Saint Palace's estate. Soon after, the gray-clad old man arrived above the Wandering Saint Palace's estate. To be more precise, he arrived above the residence of Yuan Haochen, the palace master of the wandering Saint Palace. The sky ahead was filled with dark clouds. 5-colored auspicious clouds were blooming in the sky, emitting dazzling rays of light. Under these colorful auspicious clouds, dark clouds covered the sky. Countless bolts of purple lightning intertwined within them, and they looked like tiny purple snakes that were slithering and rolling about. The dark clouds that had gathered together were none other than tribulation clouds. It was the tribulation clouds of the celestial ascension tribulation. A gust of wind blew past, and the gray mist transformed into a figure in just a blink of an eye. The gray-clad old man had reappeared. At the same time, the patriarch of the Human Devil clan arrived as well. He stood respectfully beside the gray-clad old man as they watched the changing scenery in front of them. Beneath the 5-colored auspicious clouds was a tribulation cloud that was filled with purple lightning bolts. Beneath the tribulation cloud was a spacious residence. It was the residence of Yuan Haochen, the palace master of wandering Saint Palace. It was also where he cultivated. At this moment, the surroundings of Yuan Haochen, the palace master of wandering Saint Palace, were not peaceful at all. The commotion had been going on for a long time. Due to this reason, more and more elders and disciples from all over the wandering Saint Palace had gathered. In the end, it was like a bustling city. It hasn't started yet? The tribulation clouds from the celestial ascension tribulation are still gathering. When will it end? I can't wait to see the palace master of wandering Saint Palace show off his might and easily pass the celestial ascension tribulation. Me too. Most of the elders and disciples from wandering Saint Palace had come for the celestial ascension tribulation. All of them wanted to see Lord Palace Master overcome the celestial ascension tribulation. One had to know that such a scene was not something that could be seen all the time. I've read about the celestial ascension tribulation in an ancient book. It said that it takes about an hour for the tribulation clouds to gather. About an hour? That's still early. It's only been about half an hour. In other words, the celestial ascension tribulation will take form in half an hour? That's right. Many of the elders and disciples from wandering Saint Palace were knowledgeable, so they knew a thing or two about the celestial ascension tribulation. When they realized the celestial ascension tribulation would take form in half an hour, the elders and disciples from wandering Saint Palace were excited. Their faces were filled with anticipation. In the front courtyard of the residence, Yuan Haochen, the palace master of wandering Saint Palace, stood there expressionlessly. Not far from him, his eldest direct disciple, Yun Fu Yi, the vice palace master of wandering Saint Palace, was reporting to him about Duan Lingtian, the new vice palace master of wandering Saint Palace. The young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion? After learning about Duan Lingtian's true identity, Yuan Haochen could no longer remain calm. A slight frown appeared on his face. It was apparent he was surprised as well. Where's he now? Yuan Haochen asked as he looked at Yun Fuyi. He's cultivating in his residence and hasn't come out of closed-door cultivation. Even if he comes out of closed-door cultivation, there's nowhere for him to go. If he's in the wandering Saint Palace's estate, you'll be able to suppress him. However, if he leaves the wandering Saint Palace's estate, he won't be able to escape from Palace Mastershire from Great Spirit Palace. Yun Fuyi said, All right. Yuan Haochen nodded before he said, I'll deal with him after I'm done with the celestial ascension tribulation. I have to start preparing now. In 15 minutes, the celestial ascension tribulation will take form and the first bolt of lightning will descend. As soon as Yuan Haochen finished speaking, he did not wait for Yun Fuye's reply before he rose into the air and hovered in the air above his residence. Above him, the tribulation clouds shrouded the land as though they were about to blot out the sun. At the same time, numerous tribulation clouds continued to converge from all directions outside the tribulation clouds that filled the sky. As the tribulation clouds gathered, the tribulation clouds above Yuan Haochen's head deepened. They seemed to have become stronger and stronger in an instant. The violet bolts of lightning that surged within the tribulation clouds were ceaselessly increasing in number. Later on, these lightning bolts that looked like small purple snakes also became much thicker in size. Boom, 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 boom. As the tribulation clouds gathered, the sound of thunder continued to ring in the sky. Eldest senior brother, is Master going to undergo the celestial ascension tribulation? The commotion outside finally woke Huang Wenjing up from her closed-door cultivation. She immediately left her cultivation and went to the front yard of the residence to stand next to Yun Fuyi. At this moment, Yun Fuyi was looking at the sky. A figure hovered in the sky like a god. The tribulation clouds in the sky seemed to be centered around him. Little junior sister. When Yun Fuyi heard Huang Wenjing's familiar voice, he immediately regained his senses. He looked at Huang Wenjing and said with a faint smile on his face, "That's right. Master has finally undergone the celestial ascension tribulation. In just a few days, we'll have an eminent celestial in the wandering Saint Palace. Moreover, our human devil clan will have a second eminent celestial." When Yun Fuyi reached the end of his sentence, he could not help but sound excited. After all, the eminent celestial in the wandering Saint Palace was his master. Master! When Huang Wenjing heard Yun Fuyi's words, she immediately looked at the figure hovering in the sky. Apart from admiration, there was also a hint of joy in her eyes. Her master was going to become an eminent celestial soon. As Yun Wenhaochen's last disciple, Huang Wenjing, naturally, knew how long her master had been waiting for this day. And now, the day that her master had waited for had finally come, and her wish had come true. As his last disciple, she was, naturally, happy for her master. Master is going to undergo the celestial ascension tribulation soon. In other words, when Master becomes an eminent celestial in a few days, he'll finally come to an end? While Huang Wenjing was happy for her master, she couldn't help but think of a purple figure. Once this figure appeared, it was impossible to get rid of it. It was like a gangrene attached to the bone. All of a sudden, Duanling, Yun Fuyi's voice rang in Huang Wenjing's ears again. Chapter 2296. Duan Linkan. Yun Fuyi shouted angrily as he looked into the distance. Huang Wenjing followed his gaze and looked in the direction he was looking at. In the blink of an eye, the purple figure that appeared in Huang Wenjing's mind overlapped perfectly with the figure that was leading the group in the distance. Why is he here? The moment she saw this figure, Huang Wenjing panicked. Doesn't he know that coming here now is very dangerous? Huang Wenjing could not figure out why this man would come here. Did he not know his identity had been exposed? Did he not know her master would kill him? Duan Lingtian? Yun Fuyi's voice was so loud that many elders from the wandering Saint Palace who were hovering in the air outside the mansion heard his words. They immediately turned to look at the group of people who had just arrived. Everyone's attention was on the purple-clad young man in the lead. He's the new Vice Palace Master, Duan Lingtian, who joined our wandering Saint Palace 3 years ago? It's him. I've seen his portrait before. Of course, it wasn't drawn after he became the Vice Palace Master of the wandering Saint Palace. It was drawn many years ago. At that time, he wasn't the Vice Palace Master of the wandering Saint Palace. He was the young mansion master of the Azure Cloud Mansion. Duan Lingtian, the young mansion master of the Azure Cloud Mansion? I've heard of him before. I didn't expect him to be at the 9th form of the Saint's celestial stage in such a short time. That's right. It's said that it has only been 10 years since he left the Debussy subterranean for the upper province. However, he's already a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint's celestial stage from a martial cultivator who hasn't even broken through to the 1st form of the Saint's celestial stage. I wonder what kind of fortuitous encounter he had in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Or perhaps, the cultivation environment and resources in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land can allow one's cultivation base to improve so much in such a short time? Impossible! No matter how good the cultivation environment and resources in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land are, it's impossible for someone to improve so much in just 10 years. He must have gotten some other, fortuitous encounter. Even so, the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land is still a good place. After all, there's a fortuitous encounter there that allows a person to obtain such a powerful cultivation base in just 10 years. Indeed. When the group of elders and disciples from the wandering Saint Palace looked at Duan Lingtian, they could not help but discuss among themselves. The topic of their conversation gradually shifted to the strength that Duan Lingtian had raised in the past 10 years. Almost all of them were certain that Duan Lingtian had obtained a great fortuitous encounter in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. For this reason, the elders and disciples of the wandering Saint Palace were looking forward to the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Based on the current progress, it won't be long before the inter-realm transportation formation is completed. That's right. Once the inter-realm transportation formation is completed, the Human Devil clan will be able to invade the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land along with the Devil clans and occupy the rich resources there. Who knows, we might be lucky enough to encounter something similar to Duan Lingtian's fortuitous encounter. I can't wait. The group of elders and disciples from the wandering Saint Palace discussed among themselves. Duan Lingtian brought Ker, Duan Xiling, and Gan Ru Yen to the sky above the residence of the palace master of wandering Saint Palace. When Duan Lingtian came to a halt, Peng Lai, who was following behind him, did the same as well. Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls, and a few elders from the wandering Saint Palace also came to a halt when they saw Duan Lingtian. At the same time, all of them looked at Duan Lingtian. Up until now, they still did not know what Duan Lingtian was trying to do or why he had come here. After all, this was the residence of Yuan Haochen, the palace master of wandering Saint Palace. Moreover, Yuan Haochen was about to become an eminent celestial. Was he not seeking death by coming here? At this moment, it was not only the group of people who thought Duan Lingtian was seeking death. Even the group of elders and disciples from the wandering Saint Palace felt that Duan Lingtian was seeking death. Brother Lingtian, why are you here? It's dangerous here. Leave as far as you can. A familiar voice suddenly rang in Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian didn't have to turn around to be able to discern that this was Huang Qiling's voice. Huang Qiling was the first person he met in the wandering Saint Palace. He was also the son of one of the vice palace masters of wandering Saint Palace. Duan Lingtian had only learned that Huang Qiling was the son of one of the vice palace masters of wandering Saint Palace after he joined the wandering Saint Palace 3 years ago. Although Duan Lingtian knew Huang Qiling's identity in the wandering Saint Palace was not simple, he did not know Huang Qiling's background. It's dangerous here? Duan Lingtian shook his head when he heard Huang Qiling's voice transmission. He replied through voice transmission, I know you mean well, but don't you think Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, will hunt me down if I leave the wandering Saint Palace's estate now? After all, Palace Master Yuan hasn't passed the heavenly tribulation and become an eminent celestial. To me, there's no difference between him and Shi Nanfeng. If I leave the wandering Saint Palace's estate now, Shi Nanfeng will hunt me down. If I stay here, Shi Nanfeng won't make a move. Who knows, I might be able to live for a few more days after Palace Master Yuan passes the heavenly tribulation. Huang Qiling was speechless when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. Duan Lingtian's words made sense. Is there really no other way? Huang Qiling muttered to himself with a frown on his face. Actually, I'm curious. You should know I'm a human, the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion. If that's the case, why are you still concerned about me as the son of one of the vice palace masters of wandering Saint Palace? While Huang Qiling was frowning, Duan Lingtian's voice transmission entered his ears in a timely manner. Faced with this question, Huang Qiling did not hesitate at all as he replied through voice transmission, Brother Lingtian, I want to befriend you because of you as a person, not because of your identity and origin. It doesn't matter if you're a human devil or a human, you're still my friend. Moreover, compared to a human devil, I think humans are my own kind. Unfortunately, I'm useless and can't help you at all. A hint of helplessness could be heard in Huang Qiling's voice when he spoke. Huang Qiling's words had touched Duan Lingtian's heart to a certain extent. He felt as though he had not made friends with Huang Qiling in vain. What are you doing here? Are you seeking death? All of a sudden, a familiar voice entered Duan Lingtian's ears. He immediately lowered his head to look at the front courtyard of the mansion in front of him. There was a familiar figure standing in front of him. Huang Wenjing. With just a glance, Duan Lingtian recognized the figure. It was none other than Huang Wenjing, the last disciple of the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. She was also the strongest person among the younger generation in Wandering Saint Palace and the most beautiful woman in the Human Devil clan. Duan Lingtian could hear the voice. The voice transmission earlier had come from Huang Wenjing. Huang Wenjing must have found out about my true identity. However, based on her tone, it seems like she's concerned about me rather than hostile. Based on Huang Wenjing's voice transmission earlier, Duan Lingtian could tell she was genuinely concerned about him. Duan Lingtian sighed inwardly when he figured out the reason behind Huang Wenjing's concern. He pretended not to hear her voice transmission and ignored her. The person next to her must be Yun Fuyi, one of the vice palace masters of Wandering Saint Palace. When Duan Lingtian sensed the hostility from the person next to Huang Wenjing and saw the person was a young man in the mansion of the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, he could roughly guess the person's identity. Yun Fuyi was the first direct disciple of the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. He was also the first vice palace master of Wandering Saint Palace before Duan Lingtian joined Wandering Saint Palace. I feel like the Sun Saint energy in my saint origin is about to go out of control. After Duan Lingtian looked away from Yun Fuyi, he shifted his gaze to the place where the tribulation clouds gathered. It was the center of the tribulation clouds. The thing that was attracting the Sun Saint energy in his body was also there. I wonder what's in there? At this moment, Duan Lingtian was filled with curiosity and anticipation. Along the way, my understanding of this world has risen to another level. It's completely different from before. After realizing this, Duan Lingtian became even more certain. The thing behind the tribulation clouds that was attracting the Sun Saint energy in his body was not simple. Yuan Haochen. At the same time, Duan Lingtian also saw Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. Duan Lingtian was still wary of Duan Lingtian, who had casually blocked his attack 3 years ago. At this moment, Yuan Haochen was staring at the tribulation clouds in the sky as Saint Origins surged out of his body and emitted a powerful aura. After his Saint Origins surged out of his body, it resonated strongly with heaven and earth. Based on this, one could see that Duan Lingtian was extremely powerful. Yuan Haochen's comprehension of heaven and earth had reached an extremely high level. However, not only did Yuan Haochen not look at Duan Lingtian, but he did not even use his divine consciousness on Duan Lingtian. It was obvious Yuan Haochen's attention was focused on the tribulation clouds in the sky. It was as though the tribulation clouds from the celestial ascension tribulation were the only things in his world. Chapter 2297. As soon as Duan Lingtian arrived, he became the center of attention. He even overshadowed Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, who was about to undergo his celestial ascension tribulation. Duan Lingtian was the vice palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. If he only had this identity, he would not have become the center of attention. The reason why he could become the focus of attention was more because of his other identity. He was the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion. Moreover, the Azure Cloud Mansion was a human force. With such a sensitive identity, it was difficult for him not to become the center of attention. I remember, when Duan Lingtian came to the Wandering Saint Palace 3 years ago, he brought a little girl with him. They're twins. A disciple from the Wandering Saint Palace suddenly recalled this. It must be the girl next to him. There are 2 other girls as well. These 2 girls look identical. They must be twins. Duan Lingtian is really lucky to have a pair of twins with different temperaments. That's not the point. The point is, the 3 girls next to him must be humans as well. The elders and disciples from the Wandering Saint Palace discussed among themselves as they shifted their attention to the 3 girls next to Duan Lingtian. The 3 girls had come to the Wandering Saint Palace with Duan Lingtian 3 years ago, so it was not difficult for them to figure out who they were. Just like Duan Lingtian, the 3 girls were humans. Peng Lai, you're really foolish. Peng Lai, who was following behind Duan Lingtian, suddenly heard a voice transmission. Peng Lai was familiar with this voice. It came from one of his best friends in the Wandering Saint Palace, an elder from the Wandering Saint Palace. What's wrong with you? Duan Lingtian is a human. He's the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion. Based on the current situation, it's impossible for him to leave the Wandering Saint Palace alive. Can't you see that? If you continue to follow him, won't you be seeking death? The elder from the Wandering Saint Palace was clearly very concerned about Peng Lai. His voice was filled with anxiety as he spoke. When Peng Lai heard the voice transmission from the elder of the Wandering Saint Palace, he felt warmth in his heart. It wasn't that he didn't want to leave Duan Lingtian, but that he couldn't leave. With the restriction of the lightning punishment oath, if he left directly, he would be considered to have betrayed Duan Lingtian, and he would immediately be killed by the lightning punishment. If he followed Duan Lingtian, he might die, but he would definitely die a slower death. In the end, he did not have the courage to face the lightning punishment. In addition, there was also a very strong desire in the depths of his heart. Although even he himself felt that it was not realistic, he could not help but desire. It longed for its master to create a miracle. After all, his master was not an ordinary person. He could even help people improve the grade of their innate spiritual roots. In his opinion, this was already the work of an immortal. Suddenly, bush, 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 bush. The sound of wind whistling rang in the air as figures appeared from all directions. In just a blink of an eye, they arrived near the residence of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace. Lord Palace Master. A sturdy and tall figure was the first to appear near Shi Feng, the Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace. He bowed respectfully at Shi Feng. It was a young man wearing a blue robe. Although the blue robe was spacious, it seemed to become a tight fit on his body, showing off the contours of his muscles from head to toe. When he bowed at Shi Feng, a hint of respect could be seen on his face. Yuanba, you're here. Shi Feng nodded at the blue-clad man. It was obvious he thought highly of the blue-clad man. It's Xing Yuanba, the Vice Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace, the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Human Devil clan. Soon after, the group of elders and disciples from Wandering Saint Palace recognized the blue-clad man. He was the Vice Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace, one of the 3 palaces and 6 halls in the Human Devil clan. He was also widely acknowledged as the strongest person below the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage in the Human Devil clan. The people from Azure Sheen Hall are here as well. That's Gong Sun Jin, the Vice Palace Master of Azure Sheen Hall. The people from Crimson Blaze Palace are here as well. That's Wu Tianjin, the Vice Palace Master of Crimson Blaze Palace. The group of people from Wandering Saint Palace soon discovered that the Vice Palace Masters of Great Spirit Palace were here as well. Apart from the 7 leaders of the 1 palace and 6 halls, all the high-ranking officials from the 3 palaces and 6 halls had gathered. The Palace Master of Crimson Blaze Palace and the Hall Masters of the other 6 halls aren't here? Some of the disciples from Wandering Saint Palace were puzzled. Perhaps they're held up by something, someone said. Even if they're held up by something, how can all 7 of them be held up by something at the same time? Many people voiced their doubts. Don't forget that although it's a good thing that there's a second eminent celestial in the Human Devil clan, this eminent celestial is from the Wandering Saint Palace. One of the elders from Wandering Saint Palace chuckled. It's a good thing that there's an eminent celestial in the Wandering Saint Palace, but it might not be a good thing for the other 3 palaces and 6 halls. I think the palace masters and hall masters of the 3 palaces and 6 halls are gathered somewhere, discussing how to deal with the Wandering Saint Palace's rise to power. Many of the elders and disciples from Wandering Saint Palace agreed with the elders' words. They thought about it carefully and realized it was indeed the case. The 3 palaces and 6 halls had always been competitors and had always maintained a balance. However, now that there was an eminent celestial in the Wandering Saint Palace, how could the other 3 palaces and 6 halls not be anxious? The Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace is really magnanimous. He came here personally, a disciple from Wandering Saint Palace who had just come out of closed-door cultivation said. Many of the elders and disciples from Wandering Saint Palace laughed when they heard the words of the Wandering Saint Palace's disciple. One of the disciples from Wandering Saint Palace tried to hold back his laughter as he asked, "You don't tell me you think the Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace is here because our Palace Master is about to undergo the heavenly tribulation and become an eminent celestial? Is that not the case? Of course not. The Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace came to our Wandering Saint Palace a year ago and has never left. His target is none other than our Vice Palace Master, Duan Lingtian, the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion. That's him. I'm sure you've heard about the enmity between the Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace and the Azure Cloud Mansion, so I won't say much about it. So that's how it is. At the same time, the high-ranking officials from the 3 palaces and 6 halls who had just arrived turned to look at Duan Lingtian in unison. As soon as the high-ranking officials from the 3 palaces and 6 halls shifted their attention to Duan Lingtian, boom. An earth-shattering boom suddenly exploded, deafening everyone's ears. At the same time, a shockwave that seemed to cross the sky swept down from the sky. Accompanying it was an incomparably powerful aura that caused the hearts of everyone present to palpitate. The celestial ascension tribulation is here. In an instant, the same thought appeared in the minds of everyone present. Everyone who was looking at Duan Lingtian shifted their attention to the sky above Yuan Haochen, the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace. The tribulation clouds were so dense that they seemed to be able to blot out the sun. Not only did the tribulation clouds cover the vast residence of Yuan Haochen, the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, but it also covered a large area in the surroundings. It was dark and gloomy. Naturally, there were still some rays of light that refracted from afar, so it did not obstruct their vision. Boom, 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 boom. The thunderous roar continued, and one could clearly see bolts of purple lightning shuttling through the countless tribulation clouds like small snakes. Moreover, one could vaguely see some small 5-colored snakes among these small purple snakes. Naturally, the 5-colored snakes were inconspicuous compared to the purple snakes. Those who had not reached a certain cultivation base would not be able to notice them at all. The earth-shattering sound of thunder earlier must be a sign that the celestial ascension tribulation is complete. Duan Lingtian knew a thing or two about the celestial ascension tribulation. At this moment, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. At the same time, he seemed to have noticed something, and his expression changed drastically. This is bad. At this moment, Duan Lingtian discovered that the sun force in his saint origin was becoming more and more restless. He felt as though he could no longer suppress it. Moreover, the restlessness was still going on. Forget it. Just let it be. It just so happens that I also want to see what is attracting it and what it wants to do. With this thought in mind, Duan Lingtian, who already found it difficult to withstand the sun force, no longer tried to resist it. He allowed the sun force to escape his body. Almost at the same time, Duan Lingtian removed all the defensive lines. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sun force in Duan Lingtian's saint origin left his saint origin and turned into a golden flame that surged out of his body. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's body seemed to be spitting fire. Golden flames gushed out from every pore on his body. Only his hair, eyebrows, and robes were not burned. At first glance, this scene was extremely strange. Father! Duan Ling was the first to notice the change in Duan Lingtian's body. She was so shocked that she covered her mouth with both hands. Her big eyes were filled with surprise. Brother Tian? Kerr also noticed the change in Duan Lingtian's body. Although Duan Lingtian's body was spitting fire, Kerr, who was standing close to him, did not feel any heat at all. At the same time, Gan Ruyan was also attracted by the change in Duan Lingtian's body. Boom! The flames on Duan Lingtian's body left Duan Lingtian's body and turned into a ball of golden flame that shot up into the sky. It shot toward the center of the celestial ascension tribulation where the tribulation clouds gathered. That's Chapter 2298. Due to Duan Lingtian's confidence, Feng Tianwu did not hold back at all when she attacked. She went all out as soon as she made her move. This was her trust in Duan Lingtian. It was also her declaration to the others. She did not hold back, and there was no need for her to hold back. I can't believe Tian Wu's strength has increased to such a level. Duan Lingtian was shocked when he saw the strength Feng Tianwu displayed. Although he knew Feng Tianwu was very powerful, he did not expect her to be this powerful. If he had not broken through to the Paramount Saint Rudiment stage, he might not be a match for Tian Wu even if he used all of his techniques. After witnessing Feng Tianwu's strength, Duan Lingtian knew what was going on. With just a thought, the area within a 100-meter radius around him instantly turned into a sea of swords. Tens of thousands of swords whistled through the air. Wherever they passed, the void seemed to be torn apart, producing a series of piercing sounds. At the place where Feng Tianwu's territory overlapped with his territory, the flame territory gradually shattered as the sword lights whistled through the air. It was as though a mirror had been hit hard. Duan Lingtian's 10,000 swords territory was like a giant hammer that smashed hard on the mirror. As the saying went, pulling one part will affect the whole body. Although only a part of Feng Tianwu's flame territory was destroyed by Duan Lingtian's 10,000 swords territory, it was this part that affected the rest of the territory. In an instant, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Duan Lingtian's overbearing 10,000 swords territory destroyed Feng Tianwu's flame territory effortlessly. In fact, Feng Tianwu's territory was already considered very powerful. However, there was always a gap between them. In front of Duan Lingtian's 10,000 swords territory, her flame territory was so weak that it could not withstand a single blow. In just a blink of an eye, it was completely destroyed. Is this a joke? Upon seeing this scene, many of the onlookers had the same thought in their minds. Miss Feng, are you going easy on Duan Lingtian? This is too obvious. Even if they are both half-step Saint Realm experts, even if there is a difference in their strengths, it shouldn't be so exaggerated, right? It must be Miss Feng who is giving in to him. Many people whispered to each other. These people had one thing in common, and that was that they were not Saint Realm experts. The Saint Stage powerhouses present on the scene, including Ziyun, the sect leader of Drift Blaze sect, fell silent at this moment. Is this Duan Lingtian really from the mortal realm? Ziyun looked at Duan Lingtian. Her heart was filled with shock. Although she had vaguely guessed that a man who could catch the eye of her disciple, Feng Tianwu, was definitely not an ordinary man, she did not expect that this man would be so strong. Just his domain alone was enough to crush her disciple Feng Tianwu's domain. As a Saint Stage powerhouse, she, naturally, could see that her disciple, Feng Tianwu, did not hold back at all. The domain that she cast was also at its peak. However, even then, her domain was still shattered the moment Duan Lingtian's domain appeared. She was certain that Duan Lingtian was definitely not a Saint Stage powerhouse. Due to this reason, she deeply realized how terrifying Duan Lingtian's domain was. It was definitely not an ordinary domain. In fact, her disciple, Feng Tianwu's domain was an extremely high-grade flame domain. One of the reasons Feng Tianwu was so powerful was because of her powerful domain. However, even the powerful flame domain that Feng Tianwu relied on was shattered by Duan Lingtian's domain. Everything happened in just a blink of an eye. It was so fast that the onlookers could not react in time. What kind of domain did Duan Lingtian cast? Old Man Yin from the Skyrex sect had an extremely ugly expression on his face. After witnessing Duan Lingtian's domain, he faintly realized that Duan Lingtian really had the strength to defeat Feng Tianwu. As a Saint Stage powerhouse like Ziyun, he could naturally see that Feng Tianwu did not hold back at all. However, even then, Duan Lingtian still had the upper hand in terms of domain. The other Saint Stage powerhouses were also shocked. As the group of Saint Stage powerhouses discussed among themselves, the onlookers who originally thought that Feng Tianwu had held back realized that they had misunderstood Feng Tianwu. If Miss Feng did not hold back, then the foreign advisor of the Situ clan, Duan Lingtian, is too terrifying, right? That's right, this is too exaggerated. As soon as his domain appeared, it crushed Miss Feng's domain. You must know that Miss Feng is a powerhouse who's ranked at the top of the heaven ranking. It said that half of her strength comes from her own domain. Without the advantage of her domain, Miss Feng is like a tiger without its teeth. How is she going to fight? Many people were still in disbelief. After all, Duan Lingtian's domain had brought them too much shock. Elder brother Duan, what's your domain? After her own domain was crushed, Feng Tianwu was also shocked. After being stunned for a moment, she asked with an astonished expression, I feel that my domain has no resistance at all in front of your domain. 10,000 swords domain. Duan Lingtian said with a faint smile, 10,000 swords domain. Upon hearing this, Feng Tianwu nodded. Soon after, her eyes shone with brilliance again. Based on the confidence that Duan Lingtian had displayed earlier, she also knew that Duan Lingtian was really confident in fighting with her. However, when she saw the scene earlier, her heart was still filled with shock. Her big brother Duan had only unleashed his domain, yet he had crushed her domain. In retrospect, the moment her elder brother Duan's domain appeared, she clearly felt an oppressive aura rushing towards her, causing her to be a little breathless. However, she did not pay much attention to it at that time. It was not until after the domain was crushed that she realized that her elder brother Duan's strength today was not something she could compare to. The destruction of her domain also meant that her strength would be greatly reduced. Under such circumstances, defeat was already set in stone. 10,000 swords domain? When Duan Lingtian opened his mouth to respond to Feng Tianwu, the onlookers also heard Duan Lingtian's words and knew what kind of domain Duan Lingtian had used. 10,000 swords domain. It really lives up to its name. In Duan Lingtian's domain, I'm afraid there are really tens of thousands of solidified sword rays. Moreover, they don't look much different from real swords. Such a domain looks so domineering. I didn't expect it to be so powerful as well. Most of the people present on the scene had their eyes focused on the sword rays that were wreaking havoc within a radius of 100 meters around Duan Lingtian. The sword rays seemed to have surrounded Duan Lingtian and formed a world of swords. 10,000 swords domain? After hearing Duan Lingtian's words, the sect leader of Drift Blaze sect, Ziyun, narrowed her eyes. If it's really the 10,000 swords domain, doesn't that mean he's most likely the successor of the extinct disciple? In Ziyun's heart, there was a secret that only she knew. It was a fortuitous encounter she had when she was young. That fortuitous encounter allowed her to obtain the inheritance of a female powerhouse. That female powerhouse claimed to be the successor of the Blazing Phoenix progeny, the fifth absolute of the seven absolute sect. After she obtained the inheritance, it was equivalent to her inheriting the Blazing Phoenix progeny's inheritance. She became the only successor of the Blazing Phoenix progeny. Due to that fortuitous encounter, her innate talent that was originally not very strong further stimulated her potential. Currently, she even possessed a strength that even the Windfall Nation's imperial family was wary of. She knew very well that if it was not for that fortuitous encounter, she might not even be a Saint Stage powerhouse now, let alone a Saint Stage powerhouse that even the Windfall Nation's imperial family was wary of. Her entire life had changed because of that fortuitous encounter. For this reason, she was filled with gratitude toward the female powerhouse who left behind the Blazing Phoenix progeny's inheritance and remembered her message. In her message, the female powerhouse had mentioned that she hoped that after she obtained the inheritance, she would continue to pass down the Blazing Phoenix progeny until the Seven Absolutes sect's Seven Absolutes token appeared. Once the Seven Absolutes token appeared, the Blazing Phoenix progeny would have to return to the Seven Absolutes sect. As long as the Seven Absolutes sect needed it, they would be willing to sacrifice everything for the Seven Absolutes sect. Ziyun knew her innate talent was only ordinary. Even if she continued to improve, it would be difficult for her to achieve great things. For this reason, she had been looking for a young genius who could inherit the Blazing Phoenix progeny since a long time ago. Feng Tianwu was the young genius she had found. Although she was only born in the mortal continent, her innate talent was extraordinary. What surprised her even more was Feng Tianwu's progress in cultivating the Blazing Phoenix progeny's mental cultivation method was so fast that it was terrifying. It was as though the Blazing Phoenix progeny's mental cultivation method was made for her. When she saw how Feng Tianwu managed to achieve so much in just a few years with the help of the Blazing Phoenix progeny's mental cultivation method, she knew she could give an explanation to the powerhouse who left behind the Blazing Phoenix progeny's inheritance. Due to her innate talent, it was difficult for her to shoulder the responsibility of inheriting the Blazing Phoenix progeny. However, this disciple of hers could do it. She believed her disciple's innate talent in the martial Tao was definitely not inferior to the successors of the other 6 absolutes of the 7 absolutes sect other than the Fog Rain progeny. She did not dare to compare herself to the Fog Rain progeny. This was because the female powerhouse who left her the inheritance had left behind some information about the 7 absolutes sect. She had emphasized on the Fog Rain progeny, the absolute of the 7 absolutes sect. As the absolute of the 7 absolutes sect, the Fog Rain progeny was different from the other 6 absolutes. It could go 1,000 years without a successor, 10,000 years without a successor, or even 100,000 years without a successor. However, when a successor appeared, it would signify the beginning of a new era. There was a saying in the Tao Martial Saint Land. The Fog Rain progeny of the 7 absolutes had the ability to summon clouds and rain with a flip of their hand. This sentence was widely acknowledged by many people in the Tao Martial Saint Land. Based on this, one could see how famous the Fog Rain progeny of the 7 absolutes sect was. It said that the previous Fog Rain progeny was a powerhouse known as the Sword Saint. The territory he mastered was the 10,000 Swords territory. This was the reason why Ziyun was shocked when Duan Lingtian said his territory was the 10,000 Swords territory. Chapter 2299. The dazzling flash of light happened to block the view of the patriarch of the human demon clan, who could see through the tribulation clouds. At the same time, boom! When a dazzling purple and white light was reflected in the eyes of the group under the tribulation cloud, an earth-shaking thunder resounded in their ears in a timely manner. It was deafening. Following that, they saw a bolt of lightning as thick as an adult's arm shot down from the tribulation clouds toward Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. It's the tribulation lightning. The first tribulation lightning has appeared. Many people had the same thought when they saw the lightning bolt that was about to descend. However, their eyes widened when they saw it. This was because they were shocked to see, before the bolt of lightning that was as thick as an adult's arm could reach Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, and Yuan Haochen had yet to make a move to destroy it, Yuan Haochen was shocked. Another purple and white light flashed, causing many people with lower cultivation bases to feel pain in their eyes. Boom! Then, another thunderous clap rang in the air as though it was going to shatter the heavens. Following that, another bolt of lightning as thick as an adult's arm appeared. This bolt of lightning was similar to the one that struck Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. It was the tribulation lightning. What's going on? The first tribulation lightning hasn't even gotten close to Lord Palace Master. Why is the second tribulation lightning here? Is this the second tribulation lightning? I don't think there's any difference between the second tribulation lightning and the first tribulation lightning. In fact, they look identical. What's going on? Are there 2 bolts of lightning in the first tribulation lightning? Impossible. There are 81 bolts of lightning in the celestial ascension tribulation. However, each bolt of lightning is independent. Moreover, there's a gap between the bolts of lightning. If the bolts of lightning were to appear one after another, it would only take half a day. There's no need to wait for a few days. That's true. However, what's with this tribulation lightning? The vice palace masters of the Wandering Saint Palace were not the only ones who were confused. Even the vice palace masters and vice hall masters of the 3 palaces and 6 halls, including Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, could not understand what was going on even though their minds could keep up with the speed of the tribulation lightning. Master, why are there 2 identical lightning tribulations? High up in the sky, behind the tribulation clouds, the patriarch of the human devil clan finally managed to see through the tribulation clouds. He happened to see 2 identical bolts of tribulation lightning appearing one after another. Regarding this, he could not understand it no matter how much he thought about it. After all, he was someone who had overcome the celestial ascension tribulation. However, when he was undergoing the celestial ascension tribulation, there was an hour between the first and second lightning bolts. Moreover, the second bolt of tribulation lightning was even thicker and more powerful than the first. Now, not only were the two bolts of lightning exactly the same, but they had also appeared only a single breath apart. He couldn't understand it at all. This was completely different from the celestial ascension tribulation he knew about and the celestial ascension tribulation he had overcome. Since there are two people undergoing the celestial ascension tribulation at the same time, it's only natural that there would be two identical bolts of tribulation lightning. This time, the gray-clad old man gave the patriarch of the Human Devil clan an affirmative answer. At the same time, the gray-clad old man's piercing gaze pierced through the tribulation clouds and landed on a purple figure below. Under the tribulation clouds, the vice palace masters and vice hall masters of the 3 palaces and 6 halls were still in shock when they saw the second bolt of tribulation lightning. However, the second bolt of tribulation lightning did not strike Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. Instead, it changed direction and shot toward another figure in the distance. "Master, watch out!" Duan Lingtian was still immersed in his new understanding of heaven and earth when Peng Lai's cry rang in his ears. He was so shocked that he regained his senses. When he regained his senses, he felt an aura locking onto him. Duan Lingtian was shocked when he saw a flash of light in front of him. In the sky, a bolt of lightning as thick as an adult's arm actually blasted towards him. It was like an angry dragon whistling down from the sky. It opened its bloody mouth and wanted to swallow him in one gulp. Is this the tribulation lightning? Shouldn't the tribulation lightning be targeting Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace? Isn't he the one undergoing the tribulation? What's going on? Just as this thought appeared in Duan Lingtian's mind, the tribulation lightning that descended from the sky was getting closer and closer to him. I can't let it come over. If it comes over, Si Ling, and the others will be in danger. Since it's targeting me, I'll bring it away. With that thought in mind, Duan Lingtian's Saint Origin surged out of his body and formed a pair of flaming wings on his back. It was the divine ability, the Golden Crow's wings. However, the Golden Crow's wings formed by Duan Lingtian's Saint Origin was different from before. In the past, the Golden Crow wings he had formed with his Saint Qi seemed to have been completely transformed from a deep golden flame. However, this time, the Golden Crow wings he had formed with his Saint Qi seemed to have been completely transformed from pure golden flames. However, the Golden Crow wings he had condensed with his Saint Qi now looked like they were formed from pale golden flames. This was because most of the sun force in Duan Lingtian's body had left his Saint Origin, causing his Saint Origin to revert to its original form. However, the Sun's Saint Origin, which had been beaten back to its original form, seemed to resonate strongly with the world as soon as it broke out of his body. As the person involved, Duan Lingtian, naturally could sense this. Just now, I discovered that my comprehension of this world seems to have reached a critical point after a rapid increase. That's right. I thought it was a bottleneck. I didn't expect it to be the limit. Based on my current comprehension of heaven and earth, the resonance between my Saint Origin and heaven and earth is no different from when Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, activated his Saint Origin 3 years ago. In other words, my current understanding of this heaven and earth has almost reached the limit? Duan Lingtian realized when he sensed the resonance between his Saint Origin and heaven and earth. His comprehension of the heaven and earth had reached the limit in a daze. Such a change gave Duan Lingtian a feeling as if he was cheating in a game in his previous life. After all, his cultivation base had just broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage today. In just a day, his cultivation base had broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. Following that, his comprehension of heaven and earth had reached its limit again. It should be noted that for those who had just broken through to the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, it would take them at least a few decades to hundreds of years to comprehend heaven and earth to its limit. However, Duan Lingtian had only spent less than a day to comprehend heaven and earth. Naturally, as mentioned earlier, Duan Lingtian was still in a state of confusion about all of this. This was because he had not made any preparations. His comprehension of heaven and earth had reached its limit in a daze. Could it be because of the sun force that left me? Duan Lingtian did not have the time to think about it. However, the threat from the tribulation lightning stopped Duan Lingtian from thinking about it. Golden Crow's wings. With just a thought, Duan Lingtian activated the Golden Crow's wings on his back and flew into the distance. It feels different when I activate the divine ability, the Golden Crow's wings. Everything feels so natural. In particular, the use of my Saint Chi has become much easier. This was the first time Duan Lingtian had activated the Saint Origin in his body after his comprehension of heaven and earth had reached its limit. He could clearly feel his control of the Saint Origin had improved by more than one level. If it was said that Yang Kai had a slight understanding of this world before, and when he circulated his Saint Chi, he felt that there was only a faint connection between his Saint Chi and this world. However, when he activated his Saint Origin, he felt a strong connection between his Saint Origin and heaven and earth. There was a strong resonance between his Saint Origin and heaven and earth. It was a completely different feeling when he compared the two. Boom, boom, boom. When Duan Lingtian activated the divine ability, the Golden Crow's wings, and flew out, the tribulation lightning that had locked onto him also shot out and chased after him like a gangrene attached to a bone. As it tore through the sky, it set off a series of muffled thunderclaps. There's another tribulation lightning over there? When Duan Lingtian left the place where Ke, Duan Si Ling, and Gan Ruyen were with the tribulation lightning, he saw another tribulation lightning. At the same time, another tribulation lightning was heading toward Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. Coincidentally, he saw Yuan Haochen raising his hand and spitting out Saint Origin that resonated with heaven and earth, engulfing the tribulation lightning. The tribulation lightning that's chasing after me isn't Yuan Haochen's tribulation lightning? Could it be my own lightning tribulation? How's this possible? Although Duan Lingtian thought it was impossible, he had no choice but to accept this reality. After confirming the tribulation lightning would not hurt Ke and the other two women, Duan Lingtian came to a halt. All of a sudden, Duan Lingtian's eyes turned cold as he swept his arm out like a dragon. Waves of rolling and vast Saint Origin instantly surged out of Duan Lingtian's arm like a vast ocean. Moreover, it was a vast ocean that resonated strongly with heaven and earth. The vast ocean swept out and engulfed the tribulation lightning in just a blink of an eye, leaving no trace behind. The two tribulation lightning that came with ill intentions were defeated by Yuan Haochen and Duan Lingtian one after another. Chapter 2300. It seems like I've overestimated it, or rather, I've underestimated my current strength. Duan Lingtian had brought the tribulation lightning here because he was worried it would harm Ke, Duan Si Ling, and Gan Ruyen. For the sake of the three women's safety, he immediately cast his movement divine ability, the Golden Crow's wings, to leave the place where the three women were. However, it turned out that there was no need for him to leave at all. Just now, he had casually swung his arm. He did not even use any martial arts techniques or divine abilities, nor did he use the profundity of the Supreme Sword Dao mental cultivation method, Sovereign Heart Sword. He had easily drowned the first tribulation lightning. With his Saint Origin that was as vast as the ocean, the tribulation lightning did not even cause a ripple. It was so weak. Yuan Haochen. After defeating the first tribulation lightning, Duan Lingtian felt a sharp gaze on him. He immediately regained his senses and looked at the owner of the gaze. It was none other than Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. Yuan Haochen was a middle-aged man with a medium build. Although he did not have a striking appearance, as the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, he had a dignified air about him. He exuded the aura of a superior. Yuan Haochen was dressed in a silver robe, just like the first time Duan Lingtian had seen him. When Yuan Haochen looked at him, Duan Lingtian looked back at him fearlessly. In just a blink of an eye, not only did he see a sharp gaze, but he also saw a hint of shock and disbelief in Yuan Haochun's eyes. He was not surprised by this at all. At this moment, Yuan Haochun was not the only one who was shocked by the tribulation lightning. Even Duan Lingtian was shocked and in disbelief. Previously, I felt my comprehension of heaven and earth had reached its limit. Initially, I thought it was just a bottleneck. However, it seems like my comprehension of heaven and earth has indeed reached its limit. Especially when I defeated that tribulation thunder just now, my Saint Chi resonated strongly with the surrounding heavens and earth. Even compared to when Yuan Haochun attacked 3 years ago, my Saint Chi is stronger, not weaker. Even compared to the resonance between Yuan Haochun's Saint Chi and the surrounding heavens and earth, it's not much different. In other words, I fulfilled the conditions for the celestial ascension tribulation. When Duan Lingtian thought of this, he became excited again. The celestial ascension tribulation. At this moment he had a faint feeling. The celestial ascension tribulation. When he defeated the tribulation lightning, he discovered the tribulation lightning not only had Yuan Haochun, but it had also had its eyes on him as well. In other words, he had the tribulation stage. If that's the case, then I should thank Yuan Haochun? Usually, those who have comprehended heaven and earth to my level would have to look for an opportunity to attract the celestial ascension tribulation. As for me, my comprehension of heaven and earth had reached its limit when Yuan Haochun attracted the celestial ascension tribulation. Moreover, I was targeted by the tribulation lightning from the celestial ascension tribulation. Now that Duan Lingtian realized his comprehension of heaven and earth had reached its limit, he was able to figure out many things. Duan Lingtian and Yuan Haochun looked at each other silently for a long time. The atmosphere seemed to have frozen at this moment. However, just because they did not speak, it did not mean the others did not speak as well. Heavens! Am I seeing things? The second bolt of tribulation lightning is actually targeting Duan Lingtian. An elder from the wandering Saint Palace exclaimed, breaking the silence. The second tribulation lightning? I don't think it's the second tribulation lightning. The tribulation lightning that's targeting Duan Lingtian is the same as the tribulation lightning that's targeting Lord Palace Master. Another elder from the wandering Saint Palace said, "What's going on?" Many disciples from the wandering Saint Palace were confused. They had no idea what was going on. If I'm not mistaken, at this moment, a vice palace master from the wandering Saint Palace said with difficulty, Duan Lingtian is undergoing the celestial ascension tribulation just like Lord Palace Master. Duan Lingtian was undergoing the celestial ascension tribulation as well? As soon as the vice palace master of the wandering Saint Palace spoke, the entire place fell silent. After a while, someone finally voiced his doubts. How's this possible? How can Duan Lingtian be undergoing the celestial ascension tribulation as well? I thought Lord Palace Master was the one who attracted the celestial ascension tribulation? That's right. Lord Palace Master is the one who attracted the celestial ascension tribulation. How can Duan Lingtian be undergoing the celestial ascension tribulation as well? This is impossible. To undergo the celestial ascension tribulation, one must have a certain level of comprehension of heaven and earth. It's impossible for Duan Lingtian's comprehension of heaven and earth to have reached such a level. More and more elders and disciples from the wandering Saint Palace voiced their doubts. It's impossible for Duan Lingtian's comprehension of heaven and earth to have reached such a level. Another vice palace master from the wandering Saint Palace said as he shook his head. When Duan Lingtian destroyed the tribulation lightning earlier, the resonance between his saint origin and heaven and earth was on par with Lord Palace Master's saint origin. It's obvious his comprehension of heaven and earth is on par with Lord Palace Master's. The vice palace master of the wandering Saint Palace spoke in a confident tone. That's right. His comprehension of heaven and earth is on par with Lord Palace Master's? The elders and disciples from the wandering Saint Palace fell silent when they heard the vice palace master's words. At this moment, another vice palace master from the wandering Saint Palace, Huang Qiling's father, stepped forward. Rumor has it that when someone who has comprehended heaven and earth to the limit attracts the celestial ascension tribulation, if another person who has comprehended heaven and earth to the limit is present, the latter person will be able to draw the celestial ascension tribulation as well. In my opinion, this is the case for Duan Lingtian. The Vice Palace Master from the Wandering Saint Palace looked at Duan Lingtian with a complicated expression on his face. He did not expect Duan Lingtian's strength to be so strong. He remembered his son's words. Did his son not say that 3 years ago, Duan Lingtian was powerless against the Palace Master of the Wandering Saint Palace? Is that even possible? I've never heard of it. As the Vice Palace Masters from the Wandering Saint Palace spoke, the elders and disciples from the Wandering Saint Palace were shocked as well. Was that even possible? After all, they had never heard of such a thing before. On the other hand, Huang Qiling's father, the Palace Master of the Wandering Saint Palace, looked at his son and asked through voice transmission, "Are you sure Duan Lingtian was no match for Lord Palace Master 3 years ago? Based on his current strength, he's not any weaker than Lord Palace Master." In the end, Huang Qiling's father's tone was full of doubt. "Father, I saw it with my own eyes 3 years ago. Brother Lingtian was indeed no match for Lord Palace Master. I don't know why he's like this now. Perhaps he has improved in the past 3 years." Huang Qiling said through voice transmission with a wry smile on his face. Although Huang Qiling smiled wryly, he was inwardly excited. When he saw how strong Brother Lingtian was, he knew Brother Lingtian might be able to overcome the celestial ascension tribulation. This was especially true when he heard his father's words. Brother Lingtian's current strength was no weaker than the Palace Master of the Wandering Saint Palace. Impossible. Upon hearing Huang Qiling's words, Huang Qiling's father felt it was impossible. How could someone who couldn't even defeat Lord Palace Master grow so strong in just 3 years? No matter how monstrous he is, it's impossible. I don't know. Huang Qiling shook his head and replied through voice transmission. Meanwhile, the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls were also shocked by Duan Lingtian's strength and the celestial ascension tribulation he had attracted. Their discussion was similar to that of the people from the Wandering Saint Palace. His comprehension of heaven and earth has reached such a level? Shi Nanfeng, the Palace Master of Great Spirit Palace, had a grave expression on his face. This was because he did not expect Duan Lingtian to be so strong. He did not expect Duan Lingtian, whom he wanted to kill, to be so strong. Duan Lingtian was even stronger than him. Apart from that, he could also see it now. Duan Lingtian, the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion, had attracted the celestial ascension tribulation with the help of Yuan Haochen, the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace. As long as Duan Lingtian passed the celestial ascension tribulation, the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion would become an eminent celestial. At that time, Duan Lingtian would be able to kill him with just a wave of his hand. Even now, he knew he might not be a match for Duan Lingtian, the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion. Damn it! How did Duan Ruffing have such a powerful son? At this moment, apart from feeling indignant, Shi Nanfeng felt a deep sense of jealousy in his heart. He was jealous of Duan Ruffing, the mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion, and Duan Lingtian's father. At some point, Shi Nanfeng's eyes landed on the people next to Duan Lingtian. They were Duan Xiling, and Gan Ru Yen. His eyes gleamed with a sharp light like a blade. It was as though he wanted to vent his anger that he could not vent on Duan Lingtian on them. On the other side, Duan Lingtian, you're really good at hiding your strength. After a long time, Yuan Haochen, who was staring at Duan Lingtian, took the initiative to speak. At this moment, Yuan Haochen's gaze turned even sharper as he looked at Duan Lingtian. 3 years ago, Duan Lingtian was so weak that he could not even withstand a single blow from him. However, Duan Lingtian's strength was not inferior to his at all. Not only that, but Duan Lingtian had also attracted the celestial ascension tribulation. Palace Master Yuan, kill him. Don't tell me you're going to help a human become an eminent celestial. Chapter 2301. The Voice of Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, contained a powerful saint origin. As soon as it rang out, it suppressed all the whispers and even the rumbling of thunder from the tribulation clouds in the sky. Palace Master Yuan, kill him. Are you going to help a human become an eminent celestial? These were Shi Nanfeng's words. Naturally, many people present on the scene could hear the exasperation in Shi Nanfeng's voice. It was not difficult for them to guess the reason for Shi Nanfeng's exasperation. I'm afraid the palace master of Great Spirit Palace didn't expect Duan Lingtian to be so strong. Otherwise, he wouldn't have threatened to kill Duan Lingtian if Duan Lingtian dares to leave the Wandering Saint Palace. Now that he's seen Duan Lingtian's strength that's even stronger than his, I'm sure he's feeling uneasy. After all, the words he said earlier can be considered as a complete enmity between him and Duan Lingtian. Now that he knows he's no match for Duan Lingtian, he wants to use Palace Master Yuan to get rid of Duan Lingtian. At this moment, everyone present on the scene, including the people from Great Spirit Palace, could vaguely guess Shi Nanfeng's thoughts. They could see that Duan Lingtian was not weak at all. Based on Duan Lingtian's strength, it was likely that only Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, was a match for him. As soon as Shi Nanfeng finished speaking, everyone turned to look at Duan Lingtian. Everyone's eyes fell on Yuan Haochen, as if they wanted to see Yuan Haochen's reaction after hearing Shi Nanfeng's words. However, Yuan Haochen did not react to Shi Nanfeng's words. You've hidden it well? Duan Lingtian did not react to Shi Nanfeng's words. When he heard Yuan Haochen's words, he replied calmly, "What do you mean, Palace Master Yuan? What are you referring to?" Yuan Haochen's expression darkened when he heard Duan Lingtian's question. "You're the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion, but you disguised yourself as a humanoid devil to infiltrate the Wandering Saint Palace. You even became a vice palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. Don't tell me you haven't hidden it well enough? When I attacked you 3 years ago, you pretended you weren't a match for me. Don't tell me you haven't hidden it well enough?" Yuan Haochen's words that out of Spirit Palace Master Yuan Haochen's words that Duan Lingtian. Palace Master Yuan Haochen's Palace Master is Duan Lingtian? Duan Lingtian said with a faint smile. Duan Lingtian had an indifferent expression on his face as though he did not care about Yuan Haochen's words at all. Of course, in the depths of his heart, he only acknowledged the first point. As for the second point, it was purely Yuan Haochen's own conjecture. However, Duan Lingtian had no intention of explaining himself. What was there to explain? Did the current Yuan Haochen still have the qualifications for him to explain? 3 years ago, he was not a match for Yuan Haochen because he had not broken through to the 9th form of the Saint's celestial stage. He had not comprehended heaven and earth to its limit. However, not only was he a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint's celestial stage, but his comprehension of heaven and earth had also reached its limit. Currently, he had attracted his celestial ascension tribulation when Yuan Haochen had attracted his celestial ascension tribulation. Duan Lingtian's comprehension of heaven and earth was not inferior to Yuan Haochen at all. Under such circumstances, even if he had to fight Yuan Haochen head-on, he was not afraid at all. "You're quite calm." Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words and seeing Duan Lingtian's nonchalant attitude, Yuan Haochen felt as though he was being looked down upon. As the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, how could he tolerate being looked down upon? For this reason, his tone was extremely cold when he spoke again. An icy cold voice sounded out, and when it entered into the ears of the spectators, it caused many of them to feel as if they were in a world of ice and snow, and it was as if winter had arrived. As soon as Yuan Haochen finished speaking, the saint origin on his body roared and resonated with heaven and earth. His saint origin was like an angry dragon that was shackled by iron chains. It struggled to break free from the chains and regain its freedom. Lord Palace Master is going to make his move. The same thought appeared in the minds of the people from the Wandering Saint Palace at this moment. Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, was very excited. If Yuan Haochen made a move against Duan Lingtian, he would be happy to see it. He hoped that Yuan Haochen would be able to kill Duan Lingtian. After all, if Duan Lingtian did not die, not only him, but even the Great Spirit Palace would be in trouble. As long as Duan Lingtian dies, I'll be able to get them back if I promise Yuan Haochen some benefits. Shi Nanfeng looked at Ke and the other two women with a lustful look in his eyes. The people from Great Spirit Palace and the other 3 palaces and 6 halls were also hoping that Yuan Haochen would be able to kill Duan Lingtian. In their eyes, Duan Lingtian was a genius. After all, Duan Lingtian was a human who was about to become an eminent celestial. If he successfully became an eminent celestial, it would not be a good thing for the human devil clan or the entire devil clans. Faced with Yuan Haochen, whose saint origin was roaring like a raging dragon, Duan Lingtian stood there with a calm expression on his face. It was as though he could remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. On one side was Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace from the human devil clan, and on the other side was Duan Lingtian, the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion, who did not seem to care about Yuan Haochen at all. At this moment, the atmosphere at the scene had completely frozen. The thick smell of gunpowder permeated the air. A great battle was imminent. How's this possible? In the distance, Yun Fuyi, the vice palace master of Wandering Saint Palace and the eldest direct disciple of Yuan Haochen, looked at Duan Lingtian's back in disbelief. He still found it hard to believe that Duan Lingtian had attracted the celestial ascension tribulation and was about to become an eminent celestial. As far as he knew, the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion was just a weak martial cultivator who had not even entered the Saint's celestial stage 10 years ago. But now, he already possessed strength that was on par with his master. Beside Yun Fai, Huang Wenjing looked at the purple figure in the distance. A rare look of surprise appeared on her face that was as cold as ice. She did not expect Duan Lingtian would be so strong. She did not expect him to be so strong. He was hiding his strength 3 years ago. Huang Wenjing had witnessed the battle between her master and Duan Lingtian 3 years ago. Therefore, she knew Duan Lingtian was no match for her master 3 years ago. For this reason, she knew Duan Lingtian had been hiding his strength 3 years ago. His current strength has actually reached such a level? Gan Ru Yen was dumbfounded. As for Ke and Duan Xiling who were standing next to her, they did not seem surprised at all. It was as though they had expected this. Master strength. Initially, Peng Lai did not feel confident at all. However, when he saw Duan Lingtian's strength and the celestial ascension tribulation that Duan Lingtian had attracted, he was excited as well. As expected, his master was not an ordinary person. The miracle he had been longing for had finally appeared. Duan Lingtian. In the end, it was Yuan Haochen who broke the tense atmosphere with a cold shout. He continued in a stern voice. 3 years ago, I made a mistake in letting you join the Wandering Saint Palace and appointed you as the Vice Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace. Today, I, Yuan Haochen, will kill you right here and now to clean up the mess in the Wandering Saint Palace. As soon as Yuan Haochen finished speaking, the Saint Qi in his body surged out like a furious dragon that had just broken free of its chains and soared across the sky, shaking the surrounding area. Yuan Haochen's saint origin resonated with heaven and earth as it surged out like a raging dragon. Like a gust of wind, Yuan Haochen disappeared into thin air in the eyes of those with a weaker cultivation base. However, those with higher cultivation bases were able to vaguely catch a glimpse of Yuan Haochen's silhouette. Naturally, they could only vaguely see Duan Lingtian's figure. Apart from Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, Duan Lingtian was the only one who could see Yuan Haochen's figure clearly. Naturally, this only applied to those who were present. Those who were not present, such as the duo hiding in the tribulation clouds, the patriarch of the human devil clan and his disciple, could also see Yuan Haochen's figure clearly. Moreover, they could see Duan Lingtian's figure much clearer than Duan Lingtian and his disciple. A human? Almost as soon as Yuan Haochen made his move, the gray-clad old man, the patriarch of the human devil clan's master, frowned slightly. Under the tribulation clouds. In Duan Lingtian's field of vision, Yuan Haochen was charging toward him like a cannonball. As he ran, the saint origin around Yuan Haochen's body revolved around him like angry dragons. It resonated strongly with heaven and earth, and at the same time, It seemed to be pushing Yuan Haochen toward Duan Lingtian. This speed, Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes when he saw Yuan Haochen was not far away from him. Boom! At the same time, the saint origin that he had been accumulating in his body exploded. As soon as his saint origin exploded, it resonated strongly with heaven and earth. It was as though every move he made was related to heaven and earth. Golden Crow's wings. After using the movement divine ability, the Golden Crow's wings, Duan Lingtian's saint origin flapped a pair of flaming wings behind him. Then, in a flash, he disappeared before most people's eyes. Chapter 2302. When Duan Lingtian moved, apart from the profundity of his movement divine ability, the Golden Crow's wings, he also used the profundity of his movement martial tactics. However, even with that being the case, his speed was still not much faster than Yuan Haochen. Yuan Haochen's movement divine ability was also extraordinary. Coupled with his movement martial tactic that was better than Duan Lingtian's, his speed was almost on par with Duan Lingtian's. What a fast speed! Yuan Haochen was shocked by Duan Lingtian's speed as he chased after Duan Lingtian. Let alone the human devil clan, even in the entire devil clans, he dared not say he was the fastest below the eminent celestial, but he dared to say his speed was second to none. However, today he finally met someone who was on par with him. Moreover, it was a human. Stop! After chasing after Duan Lingtian for a while, Yuan Haochen realized it would be difficult for him to catch up to Duan Lingtian. He raised his hand and formed a claw with his fingers before he grabbed Duan Lingtian. 5 beams of saint origin shot out from between his fingers. They looked like 5 meteors that streaked across the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 5 beams of saint origin shot out at a speed that was more than twice as fast as Yuan Haochen and Duan Lingtian. In just a blink of an eye, the 5 beams of saint origin shot out from Duan Lingtian. At this moment, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. When the 5 beams of saint origin were about to catch up to Duan Lingtian, they suddenly shone brightly before they expanded one by one. It was as though they had transformed into pillars that supported the heavens. In just a blink of an eye, the 5 pillars transformed into dozens of pillars that supported the heavens. In just a blink of an eye, they transformed into hundreds of pillars that supported the heavens. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Hundreds of heaven-supporting pillars condensed from Saint Chi shot out at the same time, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Their momentum was so great that it seemed like they were about to shatter the heavens. What kind of technique is this? At the same time, Duan Lingtian's divine consciousness also detected the several hundred heaven-supporting pillars that were condensed from saint origin behind him. As soon as Duan Lingtian discovered these towering pillars, they had already traversed the sky. From top to bottom, from left to right, they formed a gigantic cage that enveloped Duan Lingtian. From the beginning until the end, Duan Lingtian did not even have time to react. 5-finger cage. Just as Duan Lingtian was enveloped by this huge cage, many onlookers exclaimed. They recognized the technique that Yuan Haochen had just used. As the onlookers whispered, Duan Lingtian also learned that Yuan Haochen was using an assistive divine ability called the 5-finger cage. This support-type divine ability was originally not very powerful. Even if it was cast by someone who was on par with the caster, they could still easily destroy the cage and escape. However, after Yuan Haochen mastered this assistive divine ability, he made many improvements to it. He even integrated the mysteries of the offensive divine ability, universe domination, into it. Therefore, when Yuan Haochen cast this assistive divine ability, the 5-finger cage, even if someone with similar strength as him wanted to break free, it would take some time. Just like Duan Lingtian right now. Boom, 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 boom. Faced with the cage that enveloped him, Duan Lingtian immediately cast the sword-wielding technique that was given to him by the Supreme Sword Dao mental cultivation method, the Sovereign Heart Sword. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The sword ray swept across the sky and shot toward the cage with the intention of breaking it. However, after a series of attacks, Duan Lingtian discovered that it was impossible for him to break free. Without some effort, it would be difficult for him to break free from the cage. Just as Duan Lingtian was unable to break free from the cage, Yuan Haochen caught up to him. With just a flash of his body, he passed through the cage and entered it. In front of him, the cage was as good as nothing. The reason for such a situation was because the cage was originally Yuan Haochen's technique. Duan Lingen, you won't be able to escape from my five-finger cage. Yuan Haochen said coldly to Duan Lingtian after entering the cage. Escape! Upon hearing Yuan Haochen's words, Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes and said nonchalantly, Palace Master Yuan, aren't you overestimating yourself? In front of you, Duan Lingtian, don't need to escape. The reason Duan Lingtian had chased after Yuan Haochen earlier was because he wanted to be in his best condition for the upcoming battle with Yuan Haochen. After all, compared to Yuan Haochen, he was not fully prepared. However, even if he was not fully prepared, he was confident that he could deal with Yuan Haochen, who was fully prepared. His confidence came from his speed and the 99 saint veins in his body. His speed ensured that he would be in his best condition. The 99 saint veins in his body ensured that his saint chi would surge out of his body immediately. In that case, I'd like to see where you get your confidence from. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words and seeing the indifference on Duan Lingtian's face, Yuan Haochen was so angry that he laughed. He raised his hand and formed a claw with his 5 fingers again. With a whoosh, he charged toward Duan Lingtian. However, this time, he did not cast the assist-type divine ability, 5-finger cage. Instead, he cast his offensive divine ability, universe domination. Bush, 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 bush. As Yuan Haochen's 5 fingers formed into a claw and swept out, the void suddenly shook and ripples spread out like ripples. An aura that seemed to be able to suppress everything was born. At this moment, Yuan Haochen seemed to be able to grab the sun, the moon, and the stars. His 5 fingers formed a claw and seemed to be able to control everything. And when the 5 fingers formed a claw and swept out, the universe was born. Universe domination was perfectly displayed by Yuan Haochen. It's not just an offensive divine ability. When Yuan Haochen's body shook and his 5 fingers formed a claw and attacked him, Duan Lingtian could see that. When Yuan Haochen attacked, it did not only contain the mysteries of divine abilities, he also saw the mysteries of a martial art move that seemed familiar. As he thought about it, he recalled the scenes from 3 years ago. At that time, Yuan Haochen's 5 fingers formed a claw that contained the mysteries of this martial art move. He casually pinched the sword that Duan Lingtian had activated with all his strength, making him feel powerless. However, compared to Yuan Haochen's attack 3 years ago, Yuan Haochen's attack today was even more powerful and terrifying. This was because Yuan Haochen had only used martial art moves when he attacked 3 years ago. This time, not only did he use martial art moves, but he also displayed his offensive divine ability. Naturally, the two could not be mentioned in the same breath. Where does your confidence come from? In the face of Yuan Haochen's thunderous attack, Duan Lingtian smiled faintly again. His face was as calm as ever. Don't worry, Palace Master Yuan. I'll show you where my confidence comes from. As soon as he finished speaking, although Duan Lingtian still had a faint smile on his face, there was a flash of seriousness in the depths of his eyes. Otherworldly celestial, sword-wielding art. In the face of Yuan Haochen's ferocious and unreserved attack, Duan Lingtian did not dare to be careless. With just a flash of his body, he conjured a few more clones. At the same time, he took out his 1,000 inscriptions saint sword and cast the sovereign heart sword. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Along with a series of short-lived sword whistling sounds, several sword rays flashed, and like soldiers, they lined up and charged towards Yuan Haochen. The sword rays pierced through the air with a piercing aura, causing the air to tremble as though it would be torn apart at any moment. Many onlookers were dazzled by Duan Lingtian and Yuan Haochen's attacks. Naturally, most of them could not see their attacks clearly. Duan Lingtian's technique is so powerful? As the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, Shi Nanfeng was a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage who was close to breaking through to the eminent celestial stage. For this reason, when he saw Duan Lingtian casting the offensive divine ability, the otherworldly celestial, and the sword-wielding art, he knew Duan Lingtian's technique was not inferior to Yuan Haochen. Moreover, Duan Lingtian's comprehension of heaven and earth was not inferior to Yuan Haochen. Shi Nanfeng, who thought Yuan Haochen would be able to kill Duan Lingtian, his confidence in Yuan Haochen was shaken for the first time. At the same time, regret rose in his heart. If he had known Duan Lingtian, the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion, was so powerful, he would not have come looking for trouble with Duan Lingtian no matter how much he wanted to avenge his last disciple. Provoking such a powerful existence was a huge disaster for both him and the entire Great Spirit Palace. What happened next was just as Shi Nanfeng had expected. Boom, 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 boom. Duan Lingtian and Yuan Haochen attacked with all their might. As they fought, the air trembled and created an earth-shattering commotion. However, in the end, neither of them could do anything to the other. They were evenly matched. There was a tie. It was the same for the next few exchanges. Duan Lingtian is actually so powerful? At the same time, Duan Lingtian's strength had completely shocked the onlookers. Even those who could not see Duan Lingtian and Yuan Haochen's attacks clearly realized how powerful Duan Lingtian was. He was not inferior to Yuan Haochen when they saw Duan Lingtian was unharmed. Palace Master Yuan, I'll help you. Chapter 2303. When Duan Lingtian heard the voice of Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, and saw Shi Nanfeng charging toward him from the corner of his eye, he narrowed his eyes. A cold light flashed in front of Duan Lingtian's eyes. Duan Lingtian was about to transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior to fight against two opponents when whoosh! White light spread from the tribulation clouds, causing the group of people below the tribulation clouds to feel that it was incomparably dazzling. Boom! When the day was blinding, an earth-shattering clap of thunder resounded, and it also came from above the tribulation clouds. Is this the second tribulation lightning of the celestial ascension tribulation? The earth-shattering sound of thunder alerted Duan Lingtian that the second tribulation lightning of the celestial ascension tribulation was about to descend. As it turned out, he had been fighting with Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, for quite some time. Two bolts of tribulation lightning descended from the sky. The first bolt was aimed at Yuan Haochen while the second bolt was aimed at Duan Lingtian. After overcoming the first tribulation lightning of the celestial ascension tribulation at the same time, Duan Lingtian and Yuan Haochen had to face the second tribulation lightning of the celestial ascension tribulation at the same time. The second tribulation lightning of the celestial ascension tribulation was much more powerful than the first one. However, this level of tribulation lightning was nothing to Duan Lingtian and Yuan Haochen. With just a wave of their hands, they destroyed the tribulation lightning. After all, the second tribulation lightning was one of the two weakest tribulation lightning of the 81 tribulation lightning of the celestial ascension tribulation. If this level of tribulation lightning was enough to pressure them, there was no need for them to continue with the tribulation lightning. Although the second tribulation lightning was not powerful, it still caused Shi Nanfeng to stop in his tracks. He did not dare to get close to Duan Lingtian before the tribulation lightning struck. At this moment, he recalled something. Currently, Duan Lingtian was undergoing the tribulation lightning of the celestial ascension tribulation. If he approached Duan Lingtian while Duan Lingtian was undergoing the tribulation lightning, the tribulation clouds might think he was trying to help Duan Lingtian overcome the tribulation. At that time, the tribulation clouds would not show him any mercy. They might send a tribulation lightning that was as powerful as the 81st tribulation lightning of the celestial ascension tribulation lightning. Fortunately, the second tribulation lightning of the celestial ascension tribulation lightning. For a moment, Shi Nanfeng silently retreated, ignoring the strange gazes that were directed at him from all directions. Duan Lingtian, Duan Tian, seeing Shi Nanfeng retreat, many of the onlookers started whispering again. Duan Lingtian. Currently, both the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace and Duan Lingtian are undergoing the celestial ascension tribulation. If Shi Nanfeng recklessly rushes forward, he might incur the wrath of the celestial ascension tribulation and be killed by the tribulation. An elder from the Crimson Blaze Palace said matter-of-factly. The palace master of Great Spirit Palace must hate Duan Lingtian to the core. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lost his mind and joined forces with the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace to deal with Duan Lingen. If it wasn't for the fact that the second tribulation lightning of the immortal ascension tribulation struck him in time and reminded him, he probably wouldn't have escaped death. How reckless! The people from the Great Spirit Palace are all brainless brats. So, lower your voice. There are quite a few people from the Great Spirit Palace here. It's not a good thing to offend them. The crowd of onlookers whispered to each other. They all knew why Shi Nanfeng had acted so hastily and stopped in time. With Shi Nanfeng's hearing, it was only natural that he heard the whispers. Duan Lingtian's face turned pale. In the end, his eyes landed on Ke, Duan Xiling, and Gan Ru Yen, who were standing nearby. A crazy idea appeared in his mind. Why don't I capture these 3 women and use them to threaten Duan Lingtian? I'll make sure Duan Lingtian doesn't retaliate and let Yuan Haochen kill him. However, as soon as this idea appeared in his mind, he quickly suppressed it. This was because he was worried that even if he detained these 3 women, they might not be able to threaten Duan Lingtian. Once they were unable to threaten Duan Lingtian, he would be in an even more passive position. This was because it would mean that he had completely offended Duan Lingtian, and there would be no turning back. At that time, if Duan Lingtian did not die, the Great Spirit Palace would not be able to rest in peace. Of course, the reason why Shi Nanfeng had such concerns was because he himself was a selfish person. Therefore, he liked to use his own selfishness to measure others. If he knew Ke and Duan Xiling were Duan Lingtian's weakness and would definitely be able to threaten Duan Lingtian, he would not have such concerns. While Shi Nanfeng was pondering, Duan Lingtian and Yuan Haochen made their moves again. One of them moved like a bird while the other moved like a cannonball. As their figures crossed each other, they also repeatedly attacked each other. However, after a while, they were still evenly matched. It was difficult to determine the victor. Duan Lingen, I didn't expect you to be so powerful. It seems like it'll be difficult to determine the victor between us. Yuan Haochen said in a deep voice as he looked at Duan Lingtian, who had also stopped moving. I didn't expect you to be so powerful as well, Palace Master Yuan. Duan Lingtian said as he looked at Yuan Haochen. Duan Lingtian's tone changed as soon as he finished speaking. However, Palace Master Yuan, I don't agree with you when you say it's difficult to determine the victor between us. Duan Lingtian paused for a moment when he reached the end of his sentence. What? Are you trying to say that you still have some tricks up your sleeve? Yuan Haochen sneered. Naturally, he did not think Duan Lingtian still had some tricks up his sleeve. This was because he had seen all the tricks Duan Lingtian had up his sleeves when they exchanged blows earlier. Apart from those tricks, he did not think Duan Lingtian had any tricks up his sleeves. I really did have some tricks up my sleeve. Duan Lingtian replied with a faint smile almost as soon as Yuan Haochen finished speaking. As soon as he replied, his body began to swell again. It seemed as though he had become much stronger in just a blink of an eye. Moreover, his purple robe seemed to be tight-fitting. Put. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Duan Lingtian's purple robe was torn apart by his expanding body. The scene that appeared after his robe was torn apart caused everyone's eyes to narrow in shock. This was because Duan Lingtian's body was no longer that of a human. Although Duan Lingtian's body was still in human form from his neck down, it no longer resembled a human. Instead, it was covered in shining scales. They were dragon scales. His hands and feet also transformed into 4 seemingly strong and powerful dragon claws. The 9 sharp claws of each dragon claw flickered with a terrifying luster, as if they could tear through everything. Human dragon body. At this moment, Duan Lingtian had finally revealed his trump card. He had transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. Dragon warrior? When Duan Lingtian transformed into a dragon warrior, the first person to react was not the group of people under the tribulation cloud. Instead, it was the gray-clad old man, the master of the patriarch of the human devil clan, who was standing on the tribulation cloud. Moreover, he's a 9-clawed dragon warrior. The gray-clad old man's gaze pierced through the tribulation cloud and landed on Duan Lingtian. An expression of shock appeared on his calm face. Don't tell me there's a 9-clawed divine dragon in the Saint Province realm? Upon seeing the 9-clawed dragon warrior, the gray-clad old man immediately thought of the 9-clawed divine dragon behind the 9-clawed dragon warrior. After all, a 9-clawed dragon warrior could only be created by a 9-clawed divine dragon. A 9-clawed dragon warrior. The patriarch of the human devil clan who was standing next to the gray-clad old man finally regained his senses. His eyes widened in shock as an expression of shock appeared on his face. Naturally, he had heard of the dragon warrior. However, he did not expect to see a 9-clawed dragon warrior in the Debussy subterranean realm in the Saint Province realm. After all, there were different grades of dragon warriors. A 9-clawed dragon warrior was the highest grade among all dragon warriors. Only a legendary 9-clawed divine dragon could create a 9-clawed dragon warrior. Could it be that a 9-clawed divine dragon has appeared in the Saint Province realm? At the same time, the patriarch of the human devil clan shared the same thoughts as his master. At the same time that this thought arose in his mind, his eyes couldn't help but reveal waves of fear. A 9-clawed divine dragon was a legendary existence after all. If a 9-clawed divine dragon appeared in the Saint Province realm, it would not be good news for the human devil clan. Since a 9-clawed dragon warrior had appeared, how could a 9-clawed divine dragon be far away? This was the thought that surfaced in the minds of the patriarch of the human devil clan and his master. Under the tribulation clouds. This is a 9-clawed dragon warrior? Whether it was Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, or the knowledgeable onlookers, all of them recognized Duan Lingtian's current form. A 9-clawed dragon warrior? What's that? Naturally, this was the first time some of the Wandering Saint Palace's disciples had heard of a 9-clawed dragon warrior. However, when the elders of Wandering Saint Palace explained to them what a 9-clawed dragon warrior was, they were stunned. A 9-clawed dragon warrior was a descendant of a 9-clawed divine dragon? They had never heard of a 9-clawed dragon warrior before, but they had heard of a 9-clawed divine dragon. A 9-clawed divine dragon was the most powerful existence among dragons. Duan Lingen, I didn't expect you to be a 9-clawed dragon warrior. Yuan Haochen looked at Duan Lingtian solemnly and said in a deep voice, I admit that I'm no match for you after you transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. Chapter 2304. Upon hearing Yuan Haochen's words, Duan Lingtian, who thought he would be able to defeat Yuan Haochen after transforming into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, was taken aback. Yuan Haochen had been holding back when they fought earlier? Everyone present on the scene was shocked as well. After all, when they saw Duan Lingtian transforming into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, they did not think Yuan Haochen would be a match for Duan Lingtian. After all, before Duan Lingtian transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, he had fought to a draw with Yuan Haochen. Now that Duan Lingtian had transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, his strength had improved. It would be a piece of cake for him to defeat or even kill Yuan Haochen. But now, Yuan Haochen's words made it clear that he didn't have a choice. He also had a trump card up his sleeves. Lord Palace Master still has a trump card up his sleeve? At this moment, even the people from the Wandering Saint Palace were shocked by Yuan Haochen's words. Let alone the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls. Does Yuan Haochen still have any trump cards he hasn't used yet? Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, thought Yuan Haochen would definitely die. However, when he heard Yuan Haochen's words, his eyes lit up. He felt as though he had risen from hell to heaven. From the beginning until the end, Shi Nanfeng did not doubt Yuan Haochen's words at all. He did not doubt Yuan Haochen's words because he knew Yuan Haochen well. He knew Yuan Haochen was not a boastful person. Master, Yun Fuyi, Yuan Haochen's first direct disciple, seemed to have thought of something as his eyes lit up. However, as soon as Yun Fuyi's eyes lit up, He recalled something important. The smile on his face froze. If Master uses that technique on Duan Ling Tian, then... Yun Fuyi muttered to himself, if Master uses that technique on Duan Ling Tian, then... Master, please don't. Huang Wenjing, who was beside Yun Fuyi, seemed to have thought of something as well. Her frosty face slightly changed as a look of deep worry appeared in her eyes. Duan Ling, you've been in the Wandering Saint Palace for 3 years? You must have heard that the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace has a technique that allows us to overcome the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. Due to this technique, no Palace Master has ever failed the Celestial Ascension Tribulation in the history of the Wandering Saint Palace. When Yun Fuyi and Huang Wenjing heard what Yuan Haochen said to Duan Ling Tian, they realized they had guessed correctly. Their master intended to use the technique to overcome the Celestial Ascension Tribulation on Duan Ling Tian. As the direct disciples of Yuan Haochen, the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, although they did not know what the technique was, they had vaguely heard their master mention it before. The technique could only be used for a period of time during the Celestial Ascension Tribulation with the help of the Tribulation Lightning. If it was used against an enemy, it would deplete all its energy in one go. If the technique was used against an enemy, those below the level of an eminent celestial would definitely die if there were no accidents. Only those who were eminent celestials or stronger would be able to survive the attack. Sush. Upon hearing Yuan Haochen's words, Duan Ling Tian finally understood what Yuan Haochen meant by the trump card. The Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace's inherited technique to overcome the Celestial Ascension Tribulation can be used against an enemy? Duan Ling Tian was shocked. He had heard about the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace's inherited technique to overcome the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. It was because of this technique that the Wandering Saint Palace was able to maintain a record of not having any Palace Masters fail the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. However, he did not expect this. The Celestial Ascension Tribulation could be used against an enemy. I see. So that's how it is. While Duan Ling Tian was still in shock, the group of people present on the scene also realized what Yuan Haochen meant by the trump card. Just like Duan Ling Tian, they were equally shocked. According to Lord Palace Master, the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace's inherited technique to overcome the Celestial Ascension Tribulation can be used against an enemy. How unexpected! If that's the case, it's not certain who will have the last laugh today. One side is a 9-clawed dragon warrior while the other side is the inherited technique of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace. I think the latter has a higher chance of winning. I agree. Apart from the people from the Wandering Saint Palace, the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls also joined in the discussion. In the end, they all came to a consensus. If Duan Ling Tian and Yuan Haochen both used their trump cards, there was a high chance that Yuan Haochen would be the last one standing. Palace Master Yuan, if I'm not mistaken, as soon as Duan Ling Tian opened his mouth, his voice was as loud as a bell as it drowned out the discussions of the crowd. Everyone fell silent and turned their attention to Duan Ling Tian. The inherited technique of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace should have some restrictions, right? Otherwise, you would have used it long ago and killed me. Duan Ling Tian continued to speak when everyone looked at him. His words were laced with a tone of certainty. Everyone nodded in agreement when they heard Duan Ling Tian's words. They agreed with Duan Ling Tian's words. If there were no restrictions, why would Yuan Haochen waste so much time arguing with Duan Ling Tian? He could have just used the technique to overcome the Celestial Ascension Tribulation to kill Duan Ling Tian. That's right. Yuan Haochen did not deny Duan Ling Tian's words. Instead, he agreed with Duan Ling Tian's words. If I use the inherited technique of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace on you, it means I won't be able to use it to overcome the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. However, with the Celestial Ascension Tribulation, I'm 90% confident I'll be able to kill an eminent celestial. I'm no match for you when you transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. If I don't use the technique, I'll definitely die. If I die, the technique won't work. In that case, I might as well use it to deal with you. At most, I'll rely on my own strength to overcome the Celestial Ascension Tribulation after I kill you. Although I might fail the celestial ascension tribulation, I might not necessarily fail. Yuan Haochen's words were filled with determination. The meaning of his words was very simple. Duanling, since you want me to die, I'll drag you down with me. Moreover, I might not necessarily die. Upon hearing Yuan Haochen's words, the indifferent expression on Duanling Tian's face disappeared. It was replaced by a solemn expression. His eyes gleamed as he assessed the gains and losses in his heart. The inherited technique of the palace masters of Wandering Saint Palace must be extremely powerful. Otherwise, how can it withstand the tribulation lightning after the celestial ascension tribulation? There were 81 bolts of tribulation lightning in the celestial ascension tribulation. The bolts of tribulation lightning would be more powerful. Throughout the generations, none of the palace masters of Wandering Saint Palace had failed the celestial ascension tribulation. It was clear the technique could withstand the tribulation lightning after the celestial ascension tribulation. If I were him, would I be able to withstand the tribulation lightning after the celestial ascension tribulation? Duanling Tian was not certain. If I used the super saint weapon, the devil seal tablet, would I be able to kill him before he uses the technique? Duanling Tian shook his head as he thought about this. Although he was now a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, he was not certain if the Super Saint weapon, the Devil Seal tablet, would be able to deal with a Devil Cultivator at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage. After all, the Devil Seal tablet was incomplete and incomplete. However, the complete Devil Seal tablet could only deal with eminent celestials and devils at most. For this reason, he did not dare to take the risk. If he lost, he would lose everything. At that time, it would be too late for him to stop. Palace Master Yuan, you win. In the end, Duanling Tian raised his hand and took out a purple robe before he reverted to his human form from a 9-clawed dragon warrior. Duanling Tian had no choice but to compromise when faced with the inherited technique of the palace masters of Wandering Saint Palace. The people present on the scene were not surprised when they saw Duanling Tian had compromised. If they were Duanling Tian, they would have compromised as well. Palace Master Yuan, we'll have another duel when both of us become eminent celestials. I'd like to see how you're going to stop me at that time. After compromising, Duanling Tian glared at Yuan Haochen and said coldly, "Let's fight." Duanling Tian's compromise was only temporary. The people present on the scene were not surprised by Duanling Tian's words since they had the same thought as well. You'll have to wait until you pass the celestial ascension tribulation. It's not as simple as you think. Yuan Haochen replied nonchalantly when he heard Duanling Tian's words. It was as though he did not think Duanling Tian would be able to pass the celestial ascension tribulation. There was a reason why he thought this way. In his opinion, Duanling Tian's celestial ascension tribulation came from the tribulation clouds he had attracted. It was not Duanling Tian's own doing. In the history of the devil clans, there were many powerhouses at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage who had comprehended heaven and earth. They would take advantage of the situation to attract their own celestial ascension tribulation. However, all of them failed the celestial ascension tribulation. It was more like a curse. For this reason, he did not think Duanling Tian would win. Chapter 2305. Duanling Tian had chosen to compromise for the time being for a simple reason. As long as he and Yuan Haochen successfully passed the heavenly tribulation, they would become eminent celestials. At that time, Yuan Haochen would not be a threat to him even if he had the heavenly tribulation technique that was passed down from the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. After all, he would be an eminent celestial by then. An eminent celestial possessed the celestial origin energy that was unique to celestials. Even a powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage who had comprehended heaven and earth would not be a match for an eminent celestial. I'd like to see how Yuan Haochen will be able to compete with me when I become an eminent celestial. Duanling Tian's eyes were filled with battle intent when he looked at Yuan Haochen again. However, Duanling Tian only glanced at Yuan Haochen for a moment before he shifted his attention back to the celestial ascension tribulation. There are 81 bolts of lightning in the celestial ascension tribulation. The later the bolts of lightning are, the more powerful they are. It won't be easy to pass the heavenly tribulation. When Duan Ling Tian thought of this, he looked at the tribulation clouds that were gathering in the sky again. His heart sank slightly. He's compromised? When Shi Nan Feng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, saw Duan Ling Tian had chosen to compromise, he could not help but feel slightly disappointed. He had thought there would be a good show to watch. He did not expect Duan Ling Tian would compromise. If only Duan Ling Tian doesn't compromise. If Yuan Haochen uses the heavenly tribulation technique passed down from the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace to kill him, Yuan Haochen might fail the heavenly tribulation as well. This was what Shi Nan Feng wanted to see the most. Although it was good news for the human devil clan that Yuan Haochen had become an eminent celestial, it was still a good thing. However, this was not a good thing for him and the Great Spirit Palace behind him. As the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, Shi Nan Feng was a selfish person to begin with. Naturally, he hoped that Duan Ling Tian and Yuan Haochen would end up injured and one would die while the other would fail the heavenly tribulation. However, isn't Yuan Haochen worried that Duan Ling Tian would kill him after he passes the heavenly tribulation and becomes an eminent celestial? Soon after, Shi Nan Feng thought of this and could not help but frown. If Duan Ling Tian would to kill Duan Ling Tian and Duan Ling Tian would be killed by Duan Ling Tian and Duan Ling Tian, to die to Duan Ling Tian. In Yuan Haochen's opinion, Duan Ling Tian was worried about Duan Ling Tian. If Duan Ling Tian successfully passed the heavenly tribulation and became an eminent celestial, Yuan Haochen would not be a match for Duan Ling Tian at all. Oh right, I almost forgot. Just as Shi Nan Feng's frown deepened, a thought flashed through his mind, as if he had suddenly thought of something. Duan Ling Tian didn't attract the celestial ascension tribulation on his own. Instead, he used Yuan Haochen's celestial ascension tribulation to attract it. In the history of the devil clans, although there are not many people who attracted the celestial ascension tribulation like Duan Ling Tian, there were still quite a few. However, all of them failed the heavenly tribulation without exception. At this crucial moment, Shi Nan Feng finally remembered this matter. No wonder Yuan Haochen was so calm when Duan Ling Tian chose to compromise. It's as though he's not worried that Duan Ling Tian's life would be threatened after Duan Ling Tian successfully passed the heavenly tribulation and became an eminent celestial. As it turns out, he didn't think Duan Ling Tian would be able to pass the celestial ascension tribulation from the beginning. Shi Nan Feng finally understood Duan Ling Tian's thoughts. To think I treated Duan Ling Tian as my greatest enemy? As it turns out, he's also a dying man. When Shi Nan Feng looked at Duan Ling Tian again, there was no longer any fear in his eyes. He looked at Duan Ling Tian as though he was looking at a dead man. In his opinion, Duan Ling Tian was no different from a dead man. Duan Ling Tian and Yuan Haochen stopped fighting and waited for the third lightning bolt from the celestial ascension tribulation to strike. The onlookers began to discuss among themselves again. Duan Ling Tian made a wise choice by compromising. As long as he passes the heavenly tribulation and becomes an eminent celestial, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace won't be a match for him. That's right. Currently, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace still has the inherited technique to overcome the heavenly tribulation. After he passes the heavenly tribulation, he'll have to use it to overcome the heavenly tribulation. Even if he doesn't use it to overcome the heavenly tribulation, he won't be able to threaten Duan Ling Tian, who's already an eminent celestial. I really don't know what the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace is thinking. If I were him, I'd definitely use the inherited technique to overcome the heavenly tribulation to kill Duan Ling Tian. Even if he doesn't have the technique to overcome the heavenly tribulation, he might not necessarily fail. Indeed, if he uses the technique to overcome the heavenly tribulation to kill Duan Ling Tian, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace might not necessarily fail the heavenly tribulation. Unless Duan Ling Tian fails the heavenly tribulation, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace will definitely die. It's obvious the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace has no intention of using the technique to overcome the heavenly tribulation to kill Duan Ling Tian. Similar discussions broke out among the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls. It was so noisy that the surroundings seemed to have turned into a wet market. Naturally, the people from Wandering Saint Palace heard these discussions. All of a sudden, their expressions turned extremely ugly. However, when one of the vice palace masters of Wandering Saint Palace spoke up, their expressions quickly returned to normal. Not only did they return to normal, but their faces were also filled with excitement. In the history of the Devil clans, none of those who relied on the Celestial Ascension Tribulation to attract the Celestial Ascension Tribulation have ever succeeded. After all, the Celestial Ascension Tribulation they attracted didn't come from their own luck. They weren't prepared to face the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. These were the words of the Vice Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace. That seems to be the case. I've read something similar in an ancient book. In the history of the Devil clans, no one like Duan Lingtian who relied on the Celestial Ascension Tribulation to attract the Celestial Ascension Tribulation has ever succeeded. How could I have forgotten about this? No wonder Lord Palace Master is so calm. As it turns out, he's already aware of this. Does this mean Duan Lingtian will be killed by the Celestial Ascension Tribulation without Lord Palace Master personally making a move? The elders and disciples of the Wandering Saint Palace discussed among themselves as a wide smile appeared on their faces. It was as though they had been lifted from hell to heaven in just a blink of an eye. When the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls heard the words of the Vice Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, they knew they had overthought things. As expected of the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, he actually thought of this. Does this mean it's impossible for Duan Lingtian to pass the Celestial Ascension Tribulation? Of course, in the history of the Devil clans, no one like him has ever passed the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. Do you think he's an exception? When the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls looked at Duan Lingtian again, there was only pity in their eyes. Unsurprisingly, Duan Siling and Gan Ru Yen heard the discussion among the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls. Their expressions changed when they heard this. Uncle Peng Lai, is this true? Duan Siling turned to look at Peng Lai, who was standing nearby. A worried expression could be seen on her beautiful face. Duan Siling was no longer the little girl she used to be. When she heard the discussions of the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls, she knew her father was in grave danger. As soon as Duan Siling finished speaking, Kerr and Gan Ru Yen turned to look at Peng Lai. They were curious about this as well. At this moment, they hoped Peng Lai would say the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls were exaggerating. However, when they saw Peng Lai nodding with a grave expression, their hearts sank completely. This was especially true for Ke. Her heart sank and her face turned deathly pale. If they didn't mention this, I would have forgotten about this as well. In the history of the Devil clans, there has never been anyone like Master who passed the Celestial Ascension Tribulation, Peng Lai said in a deep voice. However, seeing Kerr and the other 2 women's expressions change, Peng Lai hurriedly comforted them. Master is not a member of the demon race after all. Maybe he can create a miracle? Miracles may be very difficult for ordinary people to create, but for Master, it is not impossible. Of course, although Peng Lai said so, he did not hold much hope in his heart. A miracle. Hearing Peng Lai's words, although Kerr and the other 2 girls knew that Peng Lai was comforting them, their expressions still eased a bit. When they looked at Duan Lingtian again, their eyes revealed a bit of hope. Although the chances were slim, however, they still hoped that a miracle would happen to Duan Lingtian. There will definitely be a miracle. Throughout Brother Tian's journey, countless miracles have happened to him. This time, there will definitely be a miracle too. Kerr looked at Duan Lingtian and thought to herself, even if a miracle doesn't happen, I won't live alone if something happens to Brother Tian. Naturally, Kerr was prepared for the worst. Si Ling and sister. When Kerr thought about her daughter and sister, she did not dare to continue thinking about it. At this moment, in the depths of her heart, she hoped her man could create a miracle. It was not for anything else but for her daughter and sister. Duan Lingtian won't be able to escape death. Chapter 2306. Naturally, Yun Fuye's sneer was not directed at Huang Wenjing. It was directed at Duan Lingtian. The reason he sneered when he looked at Huang Wenjing was because he wanted to share the joy of Duan Lingtian's death with Huang Wenjing. Little junior sister, aren't you happy for master? However, Yun Fuyi was taken aback. He discovered Huang Wenjing was not happy at all. Not only did his junior sister not reveal a joyful expression, she instead looked as if she had a lot on her mind. He was puzzled. What's wrong with little junior sister? Little junior sister. Little junior sister. What are you thinking about? Huang Wenjing finally regained her senses when Yun Fuyi greeted her. She forced a smile on her cold face and said, "Eldest senior brother, I'm happy for master as well. I was just thinking about something else." Yun Fuyi nodded and said with a smile, "Just watch. Duan Lingtian will be killed by the Celestial Ascension Tribulation before master even makes a move." As soon as Yun Fuyi finished speaking, he shifted his gaze from Huang Wenjing to Duan Lingtian. His gaze was as cold as a knife. Although Yun Fuyi and Duan Lingtian did not have much interaction, he could not wait to kill Duan Lingtian when he found out Duan Lingtian was the young mansion master of the Azure Cloud Mansion. After all, he did not have the ability to kill Duan Lingtian. Otherwise, Duan Lingtian would not have survived until now. Killed by the Celestial Ascension Tribulation? Huang Wenjing looked at Duan Lingtian again after she was certain Yun Fuyi had shifted his gaze away from her. A hint of worry could be seen in her eyes. Even Huang Wenjing did not know why. She knew that it was impossible for her to be with this man, but she couldn't help but worry for him and hope that he would be safe. If master wants to kill you, I can still plead for mercy on your behalf. However, how am I supposed to help you during the Celestial Ascension Tribulation? When she thought of this, Huang Wenjing's beautiful face, which was as cold as ice, revealed a deep helplessness. Her master had killed the Duan Lingtian, so she could still plead for leniency. However, there was nothing she could do about the immortal Ascension Tribulation. Above the tribulation clouds. Master. The patriarch of the Human Devil clan looked at the gray-robed old man and said solemnly, "Although no one in the history of the Devil clan has succeeded in transcending the heavenly tribulation like this human, I have a feeling that this human is different from the people in the history of the Devil clan. Most importantly, this human is a 9-clawed dragon warrior." A hint of fear could be heard in the patriarch's voice as he spoke. Indeed, in the history of the Devil clan, no one in the history of the Devil clan had ever succeeded in transcending the Celestial Ascension Tribulation like Duan Lingtian, the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion. However, Duan Lingtian was different from the people in the history of the Devil clan. Duan Lingtian was a 9-clawed dragon warrior. A 9-clawed dragon warrior's body was as strong as an 8-clawed divine dragon. He could even withstand the heavenly tribulation with his body. For this reason, the patriarch of the Human Devil clan had to be wary of Duan Lingtian. But, are you so confident that he'll be able to transcend the heavenly tribulation? The gray-robed old man asked indifferently when he heard the patriarch of the Human Devil clan's words. From the beginning until the end, the gray-robed old man's expression remained calm. It was as though he could remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. I have a feeling that he's different from the people in the history of the Devil clans. It's not impossible for him to transcend the heavenly tribulation. The patriarch of the Human Devil clan said solemnly. So, don't tell me you're planning to kill him now so he can transcend the heavenly tribulation? The gray-robed old man asked again. Master, please don't tease me. He's currently undergoing the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. If I make a move recklessly, the Celestial Ascension Tribulation will think I'm trying to help him overcome the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. The patriarch of the Human Devil clan smiled bitterly. Although he was an eminent celestial, he would still be killed by the heavenly tribulation if he provoked the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. The Celestial Ascension Tribulation, even the 81st bolt of tribulation lightning, which was the last bolt of tribulation lightning, was not a threat to an eminent celestial. However, if an eminent celestial interfered with the Celestial Ascension Tribulation, the heavenly tribulation would be even more powerful and terrifying. In the history of the Devil clans, There was once an eminent celestial who wanted to help someone transcend the heavenly tribulation. However, he was killed by the heavenly tribulation. Rumor had it that the tribulation lightning that killed the eminent celestial was more than 10 times stronger than the last tribulation lightning of the celestial ascension tribulation. How would he dare to make a move when the human was undergoing the heavenly tribulation? Would he not be seeking death if he did that? So what if he successfully transcends the heavenly tribulation? Don't tell me you're not confident you can kill him after he becomes an eminent celestial? The gray-robed old man asked indifferently. Upon hearing the gray-robed old man's words, the patriarch of the human devil clans smiled wryly. Master, although I became an eminent celestial earlier than him, I'm not confident I can kill an eminent celestial who can transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. Humph. If you're so useless, I'll do it myself. The gray-robed old man snorted coldly. Based on his tone, there was a hint of disappointment in his tone. Upon hearing the gray-robed old man's words, the patriarch of the human devil clan's eyes lit up immediately. Master, you'll definitely succeed. What a joke. His master was stronger than an eminent celestial. In terms of strength, his master was comparable to a real celestial. How could he not be able to kill a mere 9-clawed dragon warrior who was an eminent celestial? Duan Lingtian was, naturally, unaware that the threat he faced was not limited to Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. He was waiting for the third bolt of lightning from the celestial ascension tribulation. Time continued to pass by. In just a blink of an eye, another half an hour had passed. All of a sudden, whoosh! The bright day was like a ball of fire ignited in the darkness, lighting up the entire world. Boom! As the dazzling light shone, an earth-shattering sound of thunder rang in the air, causing pain in the ears of those with a lower cultivation base. In the next moment, under everyone's watchful eyes, 2 bolts of lightning struck from the sky one after another. The first bolt of lightning was targeted at Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. The target of the bolt of lightning was none other than Duan Lingtian. These 2 bolts of lightning were the third bolt of lightning from the celestial ascension tribulation that Duan Lingtian and Yuan Haochen had to face. It was much stronger than the first 2 bolts of lightning. However, before the 2 of them, the third tribulation lightning was still too weak to withstand a single blow. They easily neutralized the third bolt of lightning with just a wave of their hands. The people present on the scene were not surprised when they saw how easily Duan Lingtian and Yuan Haochen neutralized the third bolt of lightning. After all, this was only the third bolt of lightning from the 81 bolts of lightning from the celestial ascension tribulation. If such a bolt of lightning was able to pressure Duan Lingtian and Duan Lingtian, they would be surprised. After Duan Lingtian and Duan Lingtian had neutralized the third bolt of lightning, the entire place fell silent. Duan Lingtian and Duan Lingtian were not the only ones waiting for the fourth bolt of lightning to strike. Everyone else was waiting for the fourth bolt of lightning as well. Time continued to pass by. Boom! Soon after, the fourth bolt of lightning struck. After the fourth bolt of lightning struck, the fifth bolt of lightning struck, the sixth bolt of lightning struck. Boom! Boom! Bolts of lightning struck one after another, targeting Duan Lingtian and Yuan Haochen. However, both of them easily neutralized the bolts of lightning. When the 30th bolt of lightning struck, Duan Lingtian and Yuan Haochen finally became serious. This was because the power of the lightning bolts this time was much stronger than the previous ones. However, when they became serious, the lightning bolts did not pose much of a threat to them. At this moment, more than a day had passed. It's getting harder and harder. After another day had passed, Duan Lingtian finally resolved the 55th lightning bolt from the celestial ascension tribulation. His expression was no longer as relaxed as before. Because he discovered, the strength of the 55th tribulation lightning was comparable to the full strength of a powerhouse who had just broken through to the 9th form of the Saint's celestial stage. However, it was still not much of a threat to him. However, Duan Lingtian could not help but feel heavy-hearted when he thought about the 26 more lightning tribulations. Boom! Boom! As time passed, the tribulation lightning continued to fall. More and more shocking tribulation lightnings struck down one after another, widening the horizons of everyone present. This is the 70th lightning bolt. Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, seems like he can't hold on for much longer. Apart from the Wandering Saint Palace, there was no lack of observant people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls who noticed Yuan Haochen's pale face. At this moment, Yuan Haochen seemed to be using all his strength. At the very least, he had displayed all the strength he had displayed when he fought Duan Lingtian 3 days ago. Duan Lingtian can't hold on for much longer as well. Duan Lingtian's situation was not much better than Duan Lingtian's. Duan Lingtian can still transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. A crimson blaze palace elder's eyes flashed as he said unhurriedly, "As for the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, I'm sure he's about to use the inherited technique to overcome the heavenly tribulation." I've long heard of the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace's inherited technique to overcome the heavenly tribulation. Unfortunately, I've never had the chance to witness it. I'm going to witness it today. Chapter 2307. After all, Duan Lingtian didn't attract the celestial ascension tribulation on his own. For this reason, he's completely unprepared for the celestial ascension tribulation. Under such circumstances, it's impossible for him to pass the celestial ascension tribulation even if he transforms into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. Indeed, his strength will increase if he transforms into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, but there's a limit to it. If he attracted the celestial ascension tribulation on his own, there's an 80% chance he'll pass the celestial ascension tribulation. However, no matter what you think, I don't think he'll succeed. I don't think he'll succeed as well. Currently, none of the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls thought Duan Lingtian would succeed. After all, in the history of the Devil clans, there was no one like Duan Lingtian who had successfully passed the celestial ascension tribulation. All of them had failed the celestial ascension tribulation. For this reason, even if Duan Lingtian could transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior and was stronger than an ordinary powerhouse at the 9th form of the Saint Celestial stage, they did not think he would be able to pass the celestial ascension tribulation. Brother Tian. While the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls were discussing among themselves, Kerr looked at Duan Lingtian with blind trust in her eyes. "I believe you'll definitely pass the celestial ascension tribulation." At this moment, Kerr was also eager for Duan Lingtian to pass the celestial ascension tribulation. Not for herself. It was for her man, her daughter, and her sister. Of course, if something really happened to her man, then she wouldn't live alone. She would follow her man to the Yellow Springs and wouldn't let her man be alone. "Father." Duan Siling looked at Duan Lingtian worriedly. Her tender cheeks were tensed up and did not relax for a long time. Gan Ru Yen looked at Duan Lingtian with a complicated expression on her face. No one knew what she was thinking. As for Peng Lai, he looked at Duan Lingtian with hope in his eyes. "I hope Master can create a miracle and break the record of the Devil clans. After all, Master is a 9-clawed dragon warrior. I hope he passes the celestial ascension tribulation." In the distance, Huang Wenjing, the last disciple of Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace and the most beautiful woman in the human devil clan, looked at Duan Lingtian expectantly. At this moment, she seemed to have forgotten about it. If Duan Lingtian successfully passed the celestial ascension tribulation and became an eminent celestial, her master, Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, would not be able to escape death. After all, based on the current situation, it would be fine if Duan Lingtian failed the celestial ascension tribulation. However, if he passed the celestial ascension tribulation and became an eminent celestial, Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, would not be a match for him. At that time, he would be able to use his trump card to transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. Yuan Haochen's trump card, the celestial ascension tribulation that had been passed down for generations by the palace masters of Wandering Saint Palace, would not pose a threat to Duan Lingtian after he became an eminent celestial. I'd like to see how many bolts of tribulation lightning Duan Lingtian can withstand. Huang Wenjing's eldest senior brother, Yun Fuyi, the vice palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, glared at Duan Lingtian with a faint sneer on his face. In his eyes, Duan Lingtian was already a dead man. It's a pity that Duan Lingtian didn't die in my hands. However, it's fine as long as he's dead. I'll be able to avenge my disciple if I personally witness him being killed by the tribulation lightning. Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, thought to himself as he glared at Duan Lingtian. However, when he looked at Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, a hint of pity could be seen in his eyes. It's a pity that Yuan Haochen didn't use the Celestial Ascension Tribulation technique that has been passed down for generations to fight Duan Lingtian. Otherwise, he might not have been able to overcome the Celestial Ascension Tribulation today. What Shi Nanfeng wanted the most was for Duan Lingtian and Yuan Haochen to end in a fight where one of them was killed and the other failed to overcome the Celestial Ascension Tribulation. Although he was happy that Duan Lingtian was about to be killed by the tribulation lightning, he was displeased when he realized that Yuan Haochen would definitely be able to overcome the Celestial Ascension Tribulation and become an eminent celestial. A man who is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. This saying could be used to describe Shi Nanfeng. How many more tribulation lightning bolts do you think Duan Lingtian will be able to withstand? While Duan Lingtian and Yuan Haochen were waiting for the 71st tribulation lightning from the Celestial Ascension Tribulation to descend, the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls began to discuss among themselves. They could not help but discuss among themselves. Based on their words, they were speculating how many more tribulation lightning bolts Duan Lingtian would be able to withstand and how long he would be able to survive. I can see that Duan Lingtian was barely able to withstand the 70th bolt of lightning earlier. For this reason, I'm sure he'll transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior when the 72nd or 73rd bolt of lightning strikes. An elder from Azure Sheen Hall speculated. 72nd tribulation lightning? 73rd tribulation lightning? Another elder from Crimson Blaze Palace chimed in. He refuted the elder from Azure Sheen Hall. I think he'll transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior when the 71st tribulation lightning strikes. I think so too. After all, based on his condition when he withstood the 70th tribulation lightning, he must have exhausted all his strength. I agree. Many people agreed with the elder from Crimson Blaze Palace's speculation. In the Wandering Saint Palace's estate, countless gloomy tribulation clouds gathered above the residence of the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. It was as though dark clouds were looming over the city. Everything under the tribulation clouds seemed to darken as though the sun and moon were dim. 2 people were undergoing the Celestial Ascension Tribulation at the same time in such an environment. The duo's tribulation lightning had successfully attracted the attention of many people. These people were from the 3 palaces and 6 halls of the Human Devil clan. Apart from the leaders of the 3 palaces and 6 halls who were absent, almost all of the high-ranking officials from the 3 palaces and 6 halls were present. At this moment, a group of people accompanied the duo as they waited for the 71st tribulation lightning to descend. Naturally, the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls were below the tribulation clouds. 2 people were hidden above the tribulation clouds. One of them was the patriarch of the Human Devil clan. The other person was even more impressive. He was the master of the patriarch of the Human Devil clan. His strength was even stronger than an eminent celestial. At this moment, both of them were looking through the tribulation clouds and looking at one of the people undergoing the tribulation lightning. The person they were staring at was a young man in purple clothes. However, they did not pay any attention to the other person. What's going on? I feel like someone's watching me. Moreover, it seems like there's more than one person watching me. Duan Lingtian, who was waiting for the 71st tribulation lightning to descend, could vaguely sense the patriarch of the Human Devil clan and his master's gaze. However, after looking around for a while, he extended his divine consciousness to investigate, but to no avail. Maybe I'm mistaken. In the end, this was the only thing he could think of as he continued to wait for the 71st tribulation lightning to descend. The Celestial Ascension Tribulation is really terrifying. It's only the 70th tribulation lightning, but I've already used all my strength. I'm afraid I'll have to transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior after 2 or 3 more tribulation lightning. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself when he recalled how terrifying the 70th lightning bolt from the Celestial Ascension tribulation was. Fortunately, the people present on the scene were unaware of Duan Ling Tian's thoughts. Otherwise, they would have been shocked as well. After all, based on Duan Ling Tian's thoughts, he would be able to withstand 2 or 3 more tribulation lightning without transforming into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. One had to know that the tribulation lightning after that was much stronger than the 70th tribulation lightning. Moreover, each tribulation lightning was stronger than the previous one. Time's up. After waiting for a while, Duan Ling Tian thought to himself as his heart jolted. Previously, Duan Ling Tian had withstood 70 tribulation lightning from the Celestial Ascension tribulation, so he had figured out the time interval between each tribulation lightning. For this reason, Duan Ling Tian could accurately predict the time of each tribulation lightning. As soon as Duan Ling Tian thought to himself, whoosh! An expanse of white suddenly lit up, illuminating the dusky space beneath the tribulation clouds. It similarly caused many people with weaker cultivations to be unable to help but squint their eyes. This light that was as bright as day was extremely dazzling. Boom! When the group of people with a weaker cultivation base squinted their eyes, an earth-shattering sound resonated in their ears. It was a thunderous sound that seemed to be able to shatter the heavens. These people with a weaker cultivation base instantly felt their eardrums vibrate. Many people were even bleeding from their ears. Some of them even had blood oozing out of their 7 orifices. The combination of the 2 tribulation thunders is truly terrifying. Many high-ranking officials from the 3 palaces and 6 halls who were not affected thought to themselves when the thunderous sound resonated in the air. Whoosh, whoosh. As soon as the thunderous sound resonated in the air, the source of the dazzling light in the sky appeared. 2 thunderbolts that were as thick as pillars shot out from the tribulation clouds in the sky. After the thunderbolts shot out, they went straight for Duan Ling Tian and Yuan Haochen. Initially, they were together. However, in just a blink of an eye, they split into 2 and charged toward Duan Ling Tian and Yuan Haochen respectively. It seemed like they were going to kill both of them. It's finally here. Duan Ling Tian, who was prepared for the 71st tribulation lightning from the Celestial Ascension tribulation, surged out of his body through his 99 saint veins. In just a blink of an eye, his saint origin resonated strongly with heaven and earth. Chapter 2308. Otherworldly Celestial Sword-Wielding Art. Faced with the 71st lightning bolt from the Celestial Ascension tribulation, Duan Ling Tian, naturally, did not dare to hold back. He unleashed all his strength as soon as he made his move. Apart from his offensive divine ability, he also unleashed the profundity of the 3rd stage of the Supreme Sword Dao mental cultivation method, the Sovereign Heart Sword. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In just a blink of an eye, under the watchful eyes of the others, Duan Ling Tian's figure flashed and split into a few clones. Clones of the 1,000 Inscriptions Saint Sword that was similar to the 1,000 Inscriptions Saint Sword he wielded appeared in his clone's hands as well. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of swords whistling in the air rang briefly as the 1,000 Inscriptions Saint Swords in the hands of Duan Ling Tian and his clones shot out in a formation toward the tribulation lightning that was descending from the sky. Black Turtle's Barrier. Faced with the 71st tribulation lightning from the Celestial Ascension tribulation, Duan Ling Tian cast a defensive divine ability that he had not used for a long time. This defensive divine ability was the best defensive divine ability in Zoroastrianism in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Black Turtle's Barrier. A few moments later, a gigantic black tortoise's silhouette appeared out of thin air and shielded Duan Ling Tian within it. The people present on the scene were not surprised at all. After all, they had seen Duan Ling Tian cast this divine ability before. However, it had been destroyed by the tribulation lightning as easily as breaking a twig. This time, there was no exception. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions rang in the air as the gigantic black turtle's silhouette formed by Duan Ling Tian's defensive divine ability the Black Turtle's barrier, was destroyed by the 71st Tribulation Lightning. From the beginning until the end, only a portion of the Tribulation Lightning's energy was depleted. The remaining energy from the Tribulation Lightning was like an angry strike from a god as it collided with Duan Lingtian's sword rays. It was as though it would not stop until one of them was dead. Boom, 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 boom. Bursts of thunderous booms rang out, complementing the thunderous booms coming from the tribulation clouds in the sky. Following that, there were also bursts of terrifying waves of aura spreading out from where the Tribulation Lightning and a group of sword lights collided. Waves of chi wreaked havoc, transforming into gusts of rapid wind that swept in all directions. At the center of the collision, small mushroom clouds bloomed out of thin air. When the mushroom cloud bloomed further, a shockwave that seemed to be able to destroy the world also swept out. For a moment, the void trembled. Everyone present could clearly feel the powerful shockwave that was rushing towards them. Having learned their lesson from the previous incident, they immediately cast their own defensive techniques. Like the 8 immortals crossing the sea, each of them showed their remarkable abilities and barely managed to resist the shockwave that hit them in the face. How is it? This Duan Lingtian didn't transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior? Is he that confident? Why do I feel like he's seeking death? The people present on the scene discussed among themselves as they shifted their attention to the purple figure in the center of the scene. At the same time, the 71st Tribulation Lightning of the Celestial Ascension Tribulation had also destroyed the sword lights that were lined up in formation. The remaining force, which was the remnant force of the Tribulation Lightning, continued to blast toward Duan Lingtian. Good timing. Faced with the remnant force of the 71st Tribulation Lightning, Duan Lingtian's clones disappeared in just a moment. In the next moment, Golden Crow's wings. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Duan Lingtian did not retreat. Instead, he moved forward and cast his movement divine ability before he flew out at lightning speed. It was as though he had transformed into a mighty goshawk that soared into the sky to meet the incoming Tribulation Lightning. Boom, 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 boom. A series of muffled thunderclaps reverberated in the air as the remnant force of the Tribulation Lightning engulfed Duan Lingtian, who was charging forward. Duan Lingtian disappeared before everyone's eyes. Is he dead? Duan Lingtian is really seeking death. I really don't know what he's thinking. Is he trying to hatch eggs with the ability to transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior? The onlookers shook their heads. Meanwhile, the high-ranking officials from the 3 palaces and 6 halls looked at the remnant force of the Tribulation Lightning that drowned Duan Lingtian with a solemn expression on their faces. At this moment, their divine consciousness could clearly sense a powerful life aura coming from inside the Tribulation Lightning. Duan Lingtian was not dead. Brother Tian. Father. Kerr and Duan Si Ling's expressions were tense and anxious. Madam, young miss, master is fine. They only sighed in relief when they heard Peng Lai's words. Gan Ru Yen sighed in relief as well. She was equally anxious. However, since she had nothing to do with Duan Lingtian, she did not show it. In fact, she was overthinking things. Even if she did not deliberately hide it, no one would pay attention to her. After a while, under everyone's watchful eyes, the remnant force of the 71st bolt of Tribulation Lightning from the Celestial Ascension Tribulation finally dissipated. That's when the clouds and mist dissipated, Duan Lingtian's figure appeared before everyone's eyes. Although Duan Lingtian looked a little wretched at this moment, his robes were tattered, his body was stained with blood, and his aura was weak. However, he had managed to withstand the remnant force of the Tribulation Lightning. Moreover, he had withstood it with his body. Is he really human? After a moment of silence, someone took the lead to ask such a question. His question was the same as everyone else's. Although it was the remnant force of the Tribulation Lightning, none of them dared to say they could withstand the remnant force of the Tribulation Lightning with their bodies. Even the people from the Great Spirit Palace who specialized in body tempering could not do so. However, Duan Lingtian, the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion, a human force, had withstood the remnant force of the Tribulation Lightning with his body. Was this something a human was capable of? "Master, isn't this a little too exaggerated?" Peng Lai was so shocked that his mouth was agape. His expression was one of disbelief. As for Ke, Duan Ling and Gan Ru Yen, they heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Duan Ling Tian was unharmed. "Even if I didn't transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, the strength of my body is still incomparable to ordinary people. Even the devil clans who specialize in body tempering and the saint beasts who are known for their strong bodies might not be as strong as me." Duan Ling Tian was very confident about his body. Although his body was not invincible and could not be compared to when he transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, it was as though his body was made of copper and iron. Although he had withstood the remnant force of the tribulation lightning, he only suffered some superficial injuries. Yuan Haochen. After withstanding the 71st bolt of tribulation lightning, Duan Ling Tian could not help but look in the direction of Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. Coincidentally, Yuan Haochen was still resisting the 71st bolt of tribulation lightning from the celestial ascension tribulation. So this is the technique passed down by the palace masters of Wandering Saint Palace to overcome the heavenly tribulation? Duan Ling Tian was stunned when he saw Yuan Haochen. This was because he saw Duan Ling Tian standing in front of him. At this moment, Yuan Haochen was standing in the distance with a calm expression on his face. He did not move at all. There was not even a trace of saint origin around his body. However, it was precisely such a Yuan Haochen that managed to block the 71st bolt of lightning. Boom, 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 boom. The 71st bolt of tribulation lightning came crashing down menacingly, but when it was still 10 meters away from Yuan Haochen, it seemed to be blocked by something and could not cross half a step. However, this was not the only thing. What surprised Duan Ling Tian the most was that after the tribulation lightning was blocked, its energy began to disperse before it gradually disappeared into thin air. Duan Ling Tian watched in disbelief as the 71st bolt of tribulation lightning that targeted Yuan Haochen gradually disappeared before his eyes. From the beginning until the end, it did not even touch Yuan Haochen's clothes. Although both of them were undergoing the heavenly tribulation and faced the same tribulation lightning, Duan Ling Tian and Yuan Haochen were completely different. Duan Ling Tian's clothes were tattered, and his body was covered in blood. He looked extremely wretched. On the other hand, Yuan Haochen's clothes were not even touched. That formless energy is actually so powerful. Not only can it resist the lightning tribulation, it can also form some sort of resonance with the lightning tribulation to a certain extent. In the end, it can even guide the lightning tribulation, causing it to continuously drain away. Duan Ling Tian had not been idle when he was watching Yuan Haochen undergoing the heavenly tribulation earlier. For this reason, he could clearly see how Yuan Haochen was undergoing the heavenly tribulation. At that time, Yuan Haochen's body also emitted a force that did not belong to him. That force seemed to be an external force. Moreover, when he faced the 71st bolt of tribulation lightning from the celestial ascension tribulation, he still had a lot of energy left in him. No wonder there has never been a case of a palace master failing the heavenly tribulation in the history of the Wandering Saint Palace. With such a technique, it's almost impossible for him to fail. Duan Ling Tian was shocked. At the same time, he felt a great pressure. The 71st bolt of tribulation lightning was already so powerful. There were still 10 bolts of tribulation lightning left. Although my body is strong, I'm afraid I can only withstand 1 or 2 bolts of tribulation lightning if I don't transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. I'll have to transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior to withstand the remaining bolts of tribulation lightning. However, even if I transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior to withstand the remaining bolts of tribulation lightning, will I be able to withstand the 81st bolt of tribulation lightning, which is also the last bolt of tribulation lightning? Duan Lingtan was not confident at all. How powerful! How terrifying! So this is the technique passed down by the palace masters of the Wandering Saint Palace? Chapter 2309. Duan Lingtian did not have the time to care about Yuan Haochen's method of overcoming the heavenly tribulation. Although he wasn't seriously injured, he still needed to spend some time to recover. There's still about an hour left. It's enough time for me to recover, Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he calmed down and began to recuperate. At the same time, the people in the surroundings began to discuss among themselves. The same tribulation lightning was useless against Palace Master Yuan from the Wandering Saint Palace. It didn't even touch Palace Master Yuan's clothes. On the other hand, Duan Lingtian's clothes are torn and covered in blood. He looks wretched. The gap between them is a little exaggerated. However, it has nothing to do with their strength. It's because the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace's method of overcoming the heavenly tribulation is too powerful. It's indeed powerful. That was the 71st tribulation lightning from the Celestial Ascension tribulation. However, it was nothing compared to Palace Master Yuan's method of overcoming the heavenly tribulation. As the one transcending the tribulation, Palace Lord Yuan wasn't even touched. No wonder no Palace Master has ever failed the heavenly tribulation in the history of the Wandering Saint Palace. With such a method of overcoming the heavenly tribulation, it's almost impossible for him to fail. Indeed, after witnessing the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, Yuan Haochen's heavenly tribulation transcendence technique, many people sighed in awe. I'm afraid Duan Lingtian is in danger now. Soon after, someone looked at Duan Lingtian and said, Indeed. Although Duan Lingtian's body is different from ordinary people, I'm afraid he'll only be able to withstand 1 or 2 more tribulation lightning before he transforms into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. After witnessing the strength of Duan Lingtian's body, the group of people present on the scene had a higher opinion of him. However, this did not mean they thought Duan Lingtian would be able to overcome the heavenly tribulation today. After all, the tribulation lightning earlier was only the 71st tribulation lightning. There were 10 more tribulation lightning after that. Furthermore, it was 10 bolts of tribulation lightning, each stronger than the last. Even if the Duan Lingtian could handle 1 or 2 more bolts of tribulation lightning before he transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, he would still be able to handle them. After transforming into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, he continued to deal with the tribulation lightning. What about the rest of the tribulation lightning? What could Duan Lingtian use to resist? Although this Duan Lingtian is a human, I have to admit that he's a rare genius. It's really a pity that he failed the tribulation today. How great would it be if he's not a human but a human devil? With his talent and potential, he'll definitely become a pillar of support for the human devil clan in the future. Many of the people present felt that it was a pity that Duan Lingtian was about to fail his tribulation. With Palace Master Yuan from Wandering Saint Palace and Palace Master Shi from Great Spirit Palace here, even if Duan Lingtian manages to escape after failing the heavenly tribulation, he won't be able to escape death. In any case, Duan Lingtian is definitely going to die this time. Unless he manages to pass the heavenly tribulation and become an eminent celestial, there's still a chance for him to survive. Otherwise, he'll definitely die. Based on the current situation, it's impossible for him to pass the heavenly tribulation. As the group of people discussed and whispered, time passed quietly. In just a blink of an eye, almost an hour had passed. It's coming. When the 72nd lightning bolt from the Celestial Ascension tribulation was about to strike, everyone turned to look at Duan Lingtian. It was as though they were waiting to see how Duan Lingtian would deal with the remaining lightning bolts. However, not many people paid attention to Yuan Haochen. Based on the technique Yuan Haochen had used to overcome the heavenly tribulation that was passed down by the Palace Masters of Wandering Saint Palace, the next bolt of tribulation lightning would not affect him much. Under such circumstances, there was no need for them to pay attention to him. After all, the outcome would be the same regardless of whether they paid attention to him or not. Boom! Soon after, the 72nd bolt of tribulation lightning from the Celestial Ascension tribulation struck. Moreover, there were 2 bolts of tribulation lightning. One was aimed at Duan Lingtian while the other was aimed at Yuan Haochen. What happened next was just as most people had expected. Duan Lingtian did not transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. After exhausting most of the Tribulation Lightning's energy, he continued to rely on his powerful body to withstand the remaining force of the Tribulation Lightning. Naturally, he was even more severely injured. However, overall, it did not affect him at all. On the other side, Yuan Haochen faced the 72nd bolt of Tribulation Lightning, and it was no different from facing the 71st bolt of Tribulation Lightning. He easily withstood it, just like before and just as most people expected. After the 72nd bolt of Tribulation Lightning, it was time for the 73rd bolt of Tribulation Lightning. Boom! As the light of day once again illuminated this dim space, an earth-shattering sound of thunder resounded. The 73rd bolt of Tribulation Lightning struck as expected. Duan Lingtian used the same trick again to deal with the 73rd bolt of Tribulation Lightning. However, this time, he was barely able to withstand it and was severely injured. It seems like I'll have to transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior for the next bolt of Tribulation Lightning. Otherwise, even if I manage to withstand it, I'll be severely injured. Under such circumstances, if I'm severely injured, it'll be extremely dangerous for me to face the next bolt of Tribulation Lightning without fully recovering. Moreover, it'll form a vicious cycle. If that's the case, it'll be impossible for me to overcome the next bolt of Tribulation Lightning. Duan Lingtian knew this very well. For this reason, even if he could withstand the 74th bolt of Tribulation Lightning without transforming into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, he would not do so. After all, it was unnecessary. I can't believe Duan Lingtian didn't transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior even after facing the 73rd bolt of Tribulation Lightning. He's really bold. However, looking at his current situation, I think he's almost at his limit. He'll probably transform into a 9-clawed dragon warrior for the next bolt of Tribulation Lightning. I think so too. It was just as most people had guessed. Almost an hour later, before the 74th bolt of Tribulation Lightning struck, Duan Lingtian transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior and waited for the bolt of Tribulation Lightning in his strongest state. He's finally transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. I wonder how many bolts of Tribulation Lightning this Duan Lingtian can withstand after transforming into a 9-clawed dragon warrior. It doesn't matter how many bolts of Tribulation Lightning he can withstand. I'm sure he won't be able to overcome the remaining bolts of Tribulation Lightning. After all, there are still 8 bolts of Tribulation Lightning. Although a 9-clawed dragon warrior is powerful, he's not that powerful. I think so too. Upon seeing Duan Lingtian transforming into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, the people present on the scene looked forward to his performance. Boom! Under everyone's expectant gazes, the 74th bolt of Tribulation Lightning struck as scheduled. Faced with the 74th bolt of Tribulation Lightning, Duan Lingtian, who had transformed into a 9-clawed dragon warrior, easily withstood it. From the beginning until the end, he did not even suffer a minor injury. Next, it was the 75th bolt of Tribulation Lightning. Although it was a little strenuous, it was still relatively easy for him to withstand it. The 76th bolt of Tribulation Lightning gave Duan Lingtian quite a bit of pressure. The 77th bolt of Tribulation Lightning gave Duan Lingtian even more pressure and injured him. The 78th bolt of Tribulation Lightning severely injured Duan Lingtian. The 79th bolt of Tribulation Lightning further injured Duan Lingtian, who had not fully recovered from his previous injuries. Wah! After the 79th bolt of Tribulation Lightning, Duan Lingtian's body swayed. His internal organs trembled as he spat out a large mouthful of blood. Blood splattered across the sky, dazzling and eye-catching. Currently, Duan Lingtian was even more injured than he was before. There are only 2 bolts of Tribulation Lightning left. With my current condition, let alone an hour, even if I'm given 10 hours to recover, I won't be able to recover to my peak condition. When Duan Lingtian thought to himself, a bitter expression appeared on his face. A hint of unwillingness could be seen in his eyes. The Celestial Ascension Tribulation had a total of 81 bolts of Tribulation Lightning. There were only 2 bolts of Tribulation Lightning left. However, with his current condition, it was almost impossible for him to overcome the 80th bolt of tribulation lightning of the celestial ascension tribulation, let alone the 81st bolt of tribulation lightning, which was also the last bolt of tribulation lightning. It's also because I wasn't prepared beforehand that I didn't use all my strength to overcome the tribulation. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in such a sorry state right now. If I'm prepared, as a 9-clawed dragon warrior, it wouldn't be difficult for me to overcome the tribulation. After the 79th bolt of tribulation lightning, Duan Ling Tian realized his shortcomings. He was not prepared enough. The reason for this was because his celestial ascension tribulation had come too suddenly. It was so sudden that he was completely unprepared. He could only brace himself and face it. I didn't expect Duan Ling Tian to be able to endure until now. He even managed to withstand the 79th bolt of tribulation lightning. When many people looked at Duan Ling Tian again, they were filled with respect. In this world, it was not only the human world that respected the strong. Even the devil clans respected the strong. Duan Ling Tian, a human who was completely unprepared for the celestial ascension tribulation, had actually made it to this stage when faced with the celestial ascension tribulation. Not to mention anything else, just this point alone was enough to earn their respect. Based on his current condition, it's impossible for him to overcome the 80th bolt of tribulation lightning. However, he's still considered to have created a new record in the devil clans for being able to survive the 80th bolt of tribulation lightning. An elder from the Crimson Blaze Palace said, "In the history of the devil clans, people like him have all failed to overcome the tribulation. However, the last person standing only lasted until the 75th bolt of tribulation lightning. If he's not a human but a member of the devil clans, his name will definitely be remembered in the history of the devil clans. What a pity!" Chapter 23:10. Although Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, had the help of the Wandering Saint Palace's inherited technique to overcome the heavenly tribulation, it was no longer as easy for him as it was in the beginning. Bush. Yuan Haochen hovered in the air about 10 meters away from him. The tribulation lightning was dispersed by an invisible force. Boom, boom, boom. However, a large portion of the tribulation lightning broke through the invisible force and charged toward Yuan Haochen like a mad bull. Yuan Haochen had no choice but to defend himself against the tribulation lightning that had broken through the inherited technique of the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. Although the tribulation lightning was not enough to worsen Yuan Haochen's injuries like what happened to Duan Ling Tian, it was still enough to injure him severely. His robes were torn, and his body was stained with blood. His aura was weak, and he looked like he was in a terrible state. Huff, 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 huff. After resisting the 79th tribulation lightning, Yuan Haochen finally relaxed. He panted heavily as sweat dripped down his face. It was as though he had just gone through a fierce battle. When the people present on the scene saw Yuan Haochen's current condition, they could not help but sigh despite being mentally prepared. Although Palace Master Yuan is in a slightly wretched state, the difference between him and Duan Ling Tian is like heaven and earth. Based on his current condition, it seems like he'll be able to withstand the 80th and 81st tribulation lightning like a child's play. Everyone has a different fate. Duan Ling Tian will die in the next tribulation lightning. On the other hand, Yuan Haochen is about to pass the heavenly tribulation and become an eminent celestial. No matter what, this is a good thing for the human devil clan. Palace Master Yuan is the Palace Master of Wandering Saint Palace, one of the human devil clan's 3 palaces and 6 halls. He's one of us. Duan Ling Tian, on the other hand, is an outsider. Indeed. The crowd of onlookers was almost certain that Duan Ling Tian would definitely die when the 80th bolt of lightning struck. And judging from the current situation, that was indeed the case. At this time, even Duan Ling Tian himself thought so. Brother Tian. Seeing her man in such a miserable state, Ker's beautiful cheeks were already wet with tears. She felt a heart-wrenching pain and wished that she could take her man's place and suffer in his place. She even wished that she could face the oncoming 80th bolt of lightning. Father! Duan Si Ling, who was standing next to Ker, was also in tears. She wanted to rush forward a few times, but she was stopped by Gan Ruyen. Gan Ruyen looked at Duan Lingtian, her eyes glistening with tears. Her beautiful face was tense, unprecedentedly nervous. Master? Peng Lai looked at the purple-clothed youth standing in the distance and let out a long sigh. He no longer had any illusions in his heart. Based on the current situation, he did not think there would be any miracles. Based on his master's current injuries, let alone the 80th bolt of lightning, even the 70th bolt of lightning from the celestial ascension tribulation would not be able to withstand it. If master dies, I'll die as well. The wandering Saint Palace won't let a traitor off the hook. Peng Lai knew this very well. However, even if I die, I won't die in vain. At the very least, I've experienced what it's like to have an indigo innate spiritual root. Peng Lai muttered to himself. He had come to terms with it. Peng Lai was clearly in despair now. Brother Lingtun, Huang Qi-ling looked at Duan Lingtun helplessly as his heart trembled violently. He could only watch, unable to do anything. You shouldn't have come 3 years ago. In the distance, Huang Wenjing, the most beautiful woman in the Human Devil clan, said to Duan Lingtian through voice transmission as she looked at him with a complicated gaze. Huang Wenjing was not annoyed by Duan Lingtian's lack of response. She continued to speak through voice transmission. However, I still don't understand. Why didn't you leave when I spread the news of your identity to everyone in the Wandering Saint Palace? If you left immediately, not only would my master not be able to come out of closed-door cultivation in time, but even Shi Nanfeng, the palace master of Great Spirit Palace, wouldn't have been able to come out in time. Are you too confident in your own strength? Huang Wenjing did not expect to receive a response from Duan Lingtian. However, she was surprised when she received a response. Duan Lingtian replied, "Thank you." This was Duan Lingtian's response to Huang Wenjing. Before Duan Lingtian arrived at the Wandering Saint Palace, he had learned about what had happened in the past year from Peng Lai. At the same time, he also learned that news of him being the young mansion master of Azure Cloud Mansion had spread in the Wandering Saint Palace. It was said that someone had leaked the news in advance. For this reason, Yun Fuyi, the vice palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, had killed several people who might have leaked the news. However, Duan Lingtian did not expect Huang Wenjing to be the one who leaked the news. He did not expect Huang Wenjing would be the one who secretly leaked the news to help him. A complicated expression flashed in his eyes when he found out it was Huang Wenjing. He thanked her from the bottom of his heart through voice transmission. Although Huang Wenjing had leaked the news in advance and did not provide him with any substantial help, he still felt indebted to her. "You're finally willing to talk to me?" Huang Wenjing sighed through voice transmission, her voice faintly tinged with excitement. "Once the 80th lightning bolt strikes from the celestial ascension tribulation, I'll definitely die." Duan Lingtian continued to say through voice transmission, "Before that, I would like to ask you for a favor. You want me to protect the people around you, right?" Before Duan Lingtian could finish speaking, Huang Wenjing interrupted him through voice transmission. She seemed to have guessed what he was going to say next. "Yes." Duan Lingtian replied through voice transmission. Indeed, he wanted to ask her this. In his opinion, Duan Lingtian was not worried at all. Huang Wenjing was the last disciple of Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace. It would not be difficult for her to protect Kerr and the others. Although the people from the 3 palaces and 6 halls of the Human Devil clan were gathered here, the person who had the most say was undoubtedly Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, who was about to become an eminent celestial. As long as he agreed to Huang Wenjing's request, Kerr and the others would not have to worry about their lives. They're really lucky. You're still concerned about their safety even when you're in such a dire situation. Huang Wenjing sighed faintly. "I promise you." After a few moments, Huang Wenjing replied through voice transmission again. At the same time, Huang Wenjing's eyes were filled with determination. She would do her best to fulfill this man's request. Even if she had to threaten him with her own life, she would ask her master to spare the lives of the people around this man. "Thank you." Duan Lingtian thanked her again. Then he said solemnly through voice transmission, If there's an afterlife, I, Duan Lingtian, will repay your kindness tenfold. If there's an afterlife, I don't need you to repay my kindness tenfold. I only want you to belong to me. Huang Wenjing's voice transmission was firm. Upon hearing this, Duan Lingtian could not help but smile wryly. He sighed inwardly. How am I, Duan Lingtian, worthy of such treatment? I can't believe I, Duan Lingtian, am going to die here today. Before I die, I'll have to tell Kerr what to do. Otherwise, she'll commit suicide as soon as I leave. Duan Lingtian knew Kerr's character very well. For this reason, he had to take precautions. In addition, he also realized that, no matter how hard he tried to recover, it was impossible for him to withstand the 80th bolt of tribulation lightning. Therefore, he did not plan to waste time on recovering from his injuries. Kerr. Duan Lingtian looked at Kerr in the distance and said through voice transmission, "Can you promise me one thing?" "Brother Tian, what is it?" Kerr replied through voice transmission. "Before I ask you to promise me one thing, I want to tell you that even if I fail the heavenly tribulation today and die, the wandering Saint Palace might not execute all of you." Duan Lingtian said. He was very confident in Huang Wenjing's ability. Based on how much Yuan Haochen, the palace master of Wandering Saint Palace, loved Huang Wenjing, as long as Huang Wenjing was determined, she would definitely be able to protect Kerr and the others. After all, Kerr and the others were not a threat to the Wandering Saint Palace or the entire Human Devil clan. "Brother Tian, if you want me to live alone, I won't agree. We're husband and wife. We'll either live or die together. Kerr will never leave you again." Before Duan Lingtian could say what he wanted her to do, Kerr seemed to have predicted his words. Her tone was resolute. Duan Lingtian felt helpless when he heard Kerr's voice transmission. Naturally, at the same time, Duan Lingtian was also touched. With such a wife, what more could he ask for? "Kerr, you." Duan Lingtian was about to send a voice transmission to dissuade Kerr. However, Kerr interrupted Duan Lingtian through voice transmission. "If you want to talk about Si Ling, I've already made up my mind. With my sister around, she'll definitely take good care of Si Ling on my behalf." After that, no matter how Duan Lingtian tried to dissuade her, Kerr's attitude remained firm. "I'll live if you live, and I'll die if you die. Nothing can make me waver. No, I can't die. I can't die here." When Duan Lingtian realized Kerr had made up her mind to tie her life to his, it was as though he had been injected with chicken blood. His eyes narrowed, and his gaze was filled with determination. In Kerr's heart, Duan Lingtian's life was more important than her own life. In Duan Lingtian's heart, Kerr's life was more important than his own life as well. Although Duan Lingtian knew there was nothing he could do, he still decided to give it his all. Even if he was reduced to ashes, he would still give it his all. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.